Alrighty, welcome back to another Off the Conversation here in Automotive Anatomy. Today's guest is some dude that I met a long time ago via forums prior to meeting him in person. And man, since 2010, I've known of Ralph, and here he is, still building Badass Accord. And obviously, for those that have the video, uh, part of YouTube, you guys can see that he's gonna start building a lowrider. I think he already started, but this is a great opportunity for him to give us an update on what he's been up to. So Ralph Vega, thank you so much, man, for making time for us.
Thank you, Gus. Long time listener, first time caller.
I love that. So what have you been up to, man?
As of late, taking care of a 10-month-old.
Congratulations on that, man.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, as you know, we've talked about this in great length, that during COVID, right at the beginning of it, my wife and I found out that we were expecting. Baby was born September of 2020, right as COVID was at its peak. And pretty much that's been night and day, day and night, in addition to working and everything else. But it's the right time and the wrong time to have a baby. We discussed this in length. Within that time too, I got the Accord back after it being down for a good 2 to 3 years. And I've been working on it here and there. There's three more things that need to be done to it in order for it to be complete. And your watchers are probably thinking to themselves, oh, your cars are never done. This one's going to be done because I need to move on to that one in the back.
No, I would agree with them because they're never done. And the reason why I say that is because you at a potluck that we had at the beach, dude, I think this was back in 2012, if I'm not mistaken. You said I'm not 15?
You said the beach, right?
The beach meet, yeah.
Was it Long Beach or Huntington Beach?
Huntington.
Okay, I remember that meet.
I don't know if it was 2012 or 2015. Something like that. You said I'm now putting more money into this car, and then you went and redid the whole entire freaking car. So no, I don't think it's ever gonna be done. But we'll get to that car, man. Let's start talking about you, man. Like, yeah, congratulations on being a dad. I mean, that's exciting. That's exciting, man.
It is, and it's also very challenging and arduous, and all those other words that go together with being damn hard.
Plus, you're so short, so by the time he's 5, he's gonna catch up to your height.
Hey, it's all right, man. If we can trade clothes, I'm fine with that. Because again, more money for that car in the back.
And buy a whole bunch of Dodger stuff. Such poor taste in baseball. We won't get into that right now. We won't get into that. But so tell us, man. Like, where did you grow up? Siblings? What makes you sad? What makes you happy? What makes you angry?
Well, right now, smile now, cry later. You know how it is. Pero I am LA born and raised. I know a lot of people like to say that, but I genuinely feel that in my heart. Throughout my life, I've always grown up within 5 miles of downtown. And I've always had a view of the downtown skyline. So I really feel as if I'm LA born and raised. The formative years of my life were in Boyle Heights. So that's the neighborhood I identify with. But growing up, I grew up in Echo Park, grew up in South Central, I grew up in Frogtown. So all the LA cats will be familiar with those neighborhoods. But for me, it's Boyle Heights through and through. And now I live down in Long Beach.
That's cool, man. How was Boyle Heights when you were growing up?
It was familiar territory because I didn't move there until I was in 7th grade, I believe, if memory serves correct. However, I had gone to the school in that neighborhood since I was in kindergarten. And even before that, I had gone to preschool in that same neighborhood. Granted, the preschool was called St. Therese, and it was right across the street from Primera Flats projects. So all the OGs, back when the projects were the projects, it was right across the street. And I can't ever recollect hearing gunshots in the background or anything like that. But those were when the projects were the projects before it all got redeveloped. And it's just familiar territory to me. It feels very much like home, and it's what I identify with strongly. It's a big part of me.
Okay. And when growing up, like, were you involved in sports, or how was like you in school? Like, did you get along with school, or?
I was good in school. I excelled at school. And the more time I've had to think about this question, because I noticed that you asked the previous two interviewers this, I'm like, okay, let me think about some questions Gus is gonna ask me, so that way I can answer them thoroughly. I was good in school. I could have been an A student, but I settled for B's. And the reason I settled for B's was because it allowed me flexibility to still have fun and enjoy my youth. And a big part of my youth was very much playing sports. So for the guys who are watching me on screen, I'm not a tall guy whatsoever. I'm only 5'3". So if I wanted to make
Three?
an, I'm only 5'3", fool.
No way.
I'm like a
I was
Muggsy Bogues.
I was messing with you, but I didn't know you were that short.
Yeah, fool, I'm short.
Oh shoot! Because
Yeah,
we
so
played football before, so your speed definitely makes up for it. But yeah, sorry, go ahead. I didn't know you were 5'3".
yeah,
Wow.
so that's to,
That
I mean,
explains it. That explains the pillow on the seat of my car. I'm kidding.
hey, it's true, man. But it's a good segue. I had to try harder in sports in order to stand out. So in us playing football, you know how fast I am. And for me being only 5'3" and playing basketball, I had to be tougher. I had to jump higher. At my best, I was able to hang from the rim with no problem. So I played, let me see, basketball, football, track. Did I say volleyball already? Volleyball. I was good at baseball, but I didn't play baseball. And quite honestly, I didn't play baseball because I knew that if I got hit with the ball, I'm going after the pitcher with the bat. So that was for my own good. I those unspoken rules in baseball are basura. I'm not a big fan of those, but I excelled in sports, and that was my youth for the most part. Is basketball, excuse me, sports, and then school. And I was on the honor roll in high school. I was a good student, but I was also a troublemaker. And the reason I got away with a lot of stuff was again because I was a good student. But it came back to bite me a bit upon graduation. So I graduated with no problem, but I graduated with a couple of D's. I remember some of them were in geometry and whatever other, they're probably more math related. And as a result of that, I wasn't able to get into college through the typical route. My SAT scores are horrible, but I've never been that good of a test taker when it comes to sitting down and filling out a bubble. If we were to converse, then I could maintain a conversation. But if you're going to test me in that manner and you think it's a good judge of testing intellect, then I think that's wrong. In any case, I got into the EOP program at Cal State Northridge, got in with no problem, ended up transferring from Cal State Northridge to Loyola Marymount because Cal State Northridge wasn't academically challenging enough for me. So I decided to transfer universities. And even that was a whole ordeal. And that's where my upbringing really played in a factor, the adversity and also at the same time being resilient to get from point A to point B to point C. Because in between that transfer, I was a student at ELAC and I almost lost my acceptance into LMU because ELAC didn't send my transcripts. So big old mess. But in any case, what I want. I go after it.
It's funny because this is gonna be an easy podcast. You're doing all the talking. I love it. Okay, so there's a lot. There's a lot that you cover there. So school-wise, you're pretty smart, but you were just like you recognize that you're like, hey, I'm not gonna be spending this many hours into just academics when I am smart enough to just get passing grades, above average passing grades, and still focus on the sport aspects. But obviously, I'm assuming that being part of a team at the school also kept you away from a lot of problems in the community where you were growing up, right? That gave you that outlet.
Yes and no, because on my downtime, I would still go to the park and play basketball primarily. And we used to run with all the cholos of the neighborhood. So I got to know them, and then plus they knew of my cousin and also my family who lived there before me and would live there longer. So when they found out, like, oh, that's so and so's cousin, like, oh, I didn't know you were so and so's cousin. And the interesting dynamic of gangs, and I'm sure you're very well aware of this, is when they know you run with someone, or if they know when they know you're cool, you're cool. They'll have your back. If something goes down, like, hey, fool, you gotta bounce. Shit's gonna go down. So I never had a problem with any of that. I spoke to them just the way you and I are, and it was a great experience, to be honest with you, because you get to know them for who they are, and also realize what good individuals these people could be if they didn't get involved with gangs. And then that was further cemented when I read in high school Father Greg Boyle's book. I forgot the name of that first book, but I read that book, and it was very instrumental in the way I viewed people, saw people, and perceived people. And ever since then, anytime he comes out with a new book, I'll go out and read it. I've conversed with him, and he's a very enlightening individual that you can learn a lot from.
Yeah, we drove all the way to his bakery, and it was cool to see. I took a picture in the homeboy mural, and it's crazy. It's crazy how he sees a second opportunity on individuals that most of us in society do not see as worth giving a second opportunity because of previous mistakes or because they lack integrity or trust. And it's crazy to see that he took the opposite, and he's like, no, I'm gonna go ahead and employ these individuals that have been through rough times, and that can be you or me. That one wrong decision kept us away from going that path.
Very, very, very true.
So you mentioned you got some D's, so obviously that means that you're not A through G. You can't go straight to a 4-year right after the bat. ELAC, East Los Angeles Community College. Was that like already like something that was a given? I'll give you an example. For me, I wasn't planning on going to community college until my high school counselor was the one who did two things, and they both included scholarships. And he gave me primarily a $250 scholarship that I should have applied to and everything, but he knew that, so that was a big motivator. He said, hey, go to a community college and enroll. That was it, man. But I wasn't going to go to community college. So like for you, was that a given?
Community college for myself.
Oh no. A cut.
10 years old. I was.
Can you sorry, a cut, I think it's from my end. Can you start again from the community college part? I do apologize.
Oh, sure. I was going to say that at that point in my life, being 17, 18 years old, I was very ignorant in my perception of community college. And I say that because people who I knew who went to community college, they were the individuals who I associated with never having direction in their life. And they would go to community college to appease their parents, but they never finished community college. And that was the stigma I associated with individuals who went to community college. I didn't want to be that individual. I wanted to go to college. I wanted to graduate. I wanted to be the first individual for my family to graduate. And that was the reason why I went the 4-year route. But now, in hindsight, being 35 years old, and especially now with a son and thinking about having to save money for college, in all reality, it would have been the smart route to go. And with my son, I am going to push for community college because you're paying for the exact same education, and you can save all that money by not having to pay for GEs at a 4-year that you can have at a 2-year. I mean, the counter argument to that is individuals who come out of a community college aren't prepared, or they don't have the same preparation as individuals who spend their freshman and sophomore year in college. But I guess that all depends on the individual and how much they push themselves and how self-motivated they are. But in any case, now I would have loved to have gone to community college because then I wouldn't have been stuck with over $60,000 in loans when I graduated.
And to everybody who's listening, if you are the one that went to a 4-year university and are in 60, 150, whatever student loans. Not saying that your route is the right or the wrong one, or that you're wrong for doing it, but I 100% agree with you, especially working in education. There's this negative stigma regarding community college. You know, you go there, you're going to be staying there forever, and you know, you're not going to get the same quality of education. You know, all the professors are, you know, on their teaching programs. I mean, all these different things that you hear. But I went to community college myself, and I absolutely love the same exact thing, the EOP program, and it is that, it is the safety net, and again, some people may never understand because they were never in this situation, and I'm not saying that they're wrong or that they didn't have it hard. I think we just face different type of challenges because you also mentioned first generation. I mean, so we got community college, we got this stigma towards it, we got first generation college student. By the way, just because you're out of high school doesn't mean that you're out of any type of threat in your community. I mean, you're still, especially, you know, walking down the street, you can still be confused with a gang member just because you're wearing an LA Dodger hat. You know, obviously other people wear that for different reasons, but so you're still in that community where you're at risk. You know, at different, you're exposing, sadly, you're a community, but you're exposing yourself other things while trying to break that barrier and go to a community college. So how was your transition towards college? Because obviously it can be easy.
It wasn't difficult. What kind of background information to this? So in high school, there was a specific teacher who was known for being hard. And that was because a lot of people would fail her class. Her name was Miss Price. And I want to say her name because she's an excellent teacher and she deserves the recognition that she deserves. So in any case, a lot of people would fail her class. She was an English teacher. And the reason they failed her class is because they didn't put forth the effort and were honestly lazy to go and ask for help. I asked for help. I struggled in that class, but as a result of me going to ask for help, I became a better student. So going into college, I told myself, if I can pass Miss Price's class, I can pass my classes in it. I can pass my classes in college. So the transition wasn't difficult. What was interesting was the newfound independence. And my first year when I was at Northridge, I actually dormed at Northridge. That way I wouldn't have to make the commute.
Because by then you're a third-year college student, right? Which is 2 years at ELAC, and then you transfer.
No, I never went to. So here, I graduated in 2004. I got accepted into Northridge immediately. So I went to Northridge for the academic school year of 2004, 2005.
Okay.
But during 2005, I decided this school's too easy for me. I need to transfer out, which is when I started my transfer process for Loyola Marymount. So I got accepted into Loyola Marymount, and I was supposed to start the following academic year in fall of 2005. But in between, during the summer break of that year, I decided to take classes at ELAC to get ahead in credits. And ELAC was supposed to send those credits and my transcripts to Loyola Marymount. They never sent it. So as a result of that, I wasn't able to start at LMU fall of 2005. I had to wait till spring semester of 2006. But in between that, all that was in limbo. I could have lost my acceptance, and here I am leaving a 4-year. I would have been stuck at a 2-year. So those are some waters I had to navigate and figure out on my own. If I really wanted it, then I had to go for it.
Oh God, that's stressful. You're like, no, the transition was easy. Yeah, but that's all part of the transition. You don't realize it, but it is. It's part of the transition because, you know, the easy part is showing up to class, taking notes, and taking the test. It's the back end, which is the deadlines, the scheduling of classes, how to even create a portal. Those are the things that as a first generation college, that's the transition that now that you're 35, that you look back at, you're like, oh yeah, I guess it was. Or once you start talking about all these different challenges. Meanwhile, how do cars come to play at this? Do you have a first car by then? Are you, Did you get a car in high school, or were you walking, or you were getting dropped off, or how did that go?
In high school, I did not have a car. I didn't get my license until the spring semester of my senior year, which is a good thing because I would have got in trouble had I had a car. Fortunately, my friend who I went to grammar school with, he was already driving by then, and he lived 3 blocks away. So he would come pick me up every morning, and he would take me to school. And the benefit of him taking me to school was that for the most part, we played all the same sports. So especially during the spring, we both played volleyball, and we both participated in track. So we would have track practice from 3 to 5, and then we would have volleyball practice from 5 to 7. Go home, do homework, do it over the next day. And then on days of games where we had a track event and a volleyball game at the same time, we would go to the track meet, participate in our events, and then go straight to the volleyball game. That was fun, to be honest with you.
You had the energy. I bet you were crazy in shape.
Yeah, now I'm paying for it with my son, who has crazy energy también.
What high school did you play for? So that way I know how bad you were.
Cathedral.
I've never heard of Cathedral. Okay. How were they in sports?
At the time, they were good. We don't want to hear about your pitiful career. No, they were good. They were good. Now they're actually good. They have a great athletic program, and they're good academically as well.
Well, yeah. Now they have good players. Makes sense. So then, you're in college. When do you actually get your first car?
I didn't get my first car until it was senior year. I'd already graduated. And yeah, it was the summer of 2004. And the first car was a 94 Accord. And it wasn't this one. It was another one.
How did you come to own that Accord?
Say that again, Gus?
How did you end up owning that car?
It was my second choice of vehicle, because prior to that, what I had wanted was an early Chevy Nova. Was it from 63 to 66? Granted, it goes, I think, up to 67, but those early formative years of the Chevy Nova, they look like a mini Chevy Impala. And for me, that was very important because I grew up with old cars, specifically the lowrider community, and that's what I wanted. I wanted a lowrider, but I couldn't find one. And the ones that I would find, the individuals wouldn't sell them to me. And then on top of that, my oldest cousin, he had a 64 Nova that he had built. He put a race engine in there. I forgot the cubic inch of whatever motor he put in there, and it was a wagon at that. A couple months later, after he finished it, he crashed it. So my mom said, yeah, you're not getting a Nova. You got to find something else. So my second choice was an Accord. And the reason it was an Accord was because years prior, I recall my uncle being at where I lived in Boyle Heights, and his then girlfriend was driving down the street. And I remember looking at it from a distance, a car, and the car stood out to me just aesthetically. I'm like, damn, that's a nice car. So it pulls up, and my uncle walks over to the car. I'm like, yo, you know this person? And the car was lowered. It was on some chrome wheels, and they were generic wheels. It wasn't anything like what we know now, but just the overall shape and design of it looked great. I want to say this was maybe even between 97 and 2000. So the Accord was still new, and I never forgot about that car. So flash forward years later, I wasn't able to get my Nova. My second choice was an Accord, and I wanted a coupe because growing up again in the lowrider community, 4-doors are inaccessible. That's just the way it is. Where it's at is the 2-doors, and that's what I wanted. I'm like, I want a 2-door. I don't want a 4-door. It took a little bit of time. I found my 2-door coupe, and I'm like, all right, we're rolling now.
Where'd you find that one?
That one we found in Sherman Oaks.
Craigslist?
No, this was back when, was it the Penny Saver, man?
You would
I
get
think
out.
this was
You would get that once a month, no?
no. It wasn't the Penny Saver. I forgot the name of this publication, but it was one where it was a book that came out weekly or monthly. You went to a store and it was this thick, and you bought it, and in there were all of these cars. I
The
can't remember the.
listings.
You know what one I'm talking about, though. I think,
Well,
right?
yeah, there was a few of them. Yeah, that you had all the listings of all the cars, little squares just next to each other.
So that's where I found it, and we went to go check out a couple of Accords until we finally landed on one, and it was a white coupe, an EX, with that ugly taupe interior.
So what happened to that one?
With that one, shortly after driving it, I was no. Shortly after driving it, probably a year and a half later, it was actually stolen. And at the time, all I had was a system in there. So they stole that, and they stole the aftermarket wheels that were on there. But the aftermarket wheels that were on there were ugly. So it is what it is.
It
But
did you
that
a
left
favor?
me, yes and no. But that left me with being stranded, with having to pay the impound fees and having to get wheels and tires and do whatever needed to be done to bring it back to par. And fortunately, I have great, amazing uncles who, once upon finding out that the car was stolen and that it had been recovered, my mom went to go pay the impound fee for me, and then my uncle got me wheels and tires, OEM wheels and tires from a CB. So I was ready to get back on the road. And one thing I wanted to add to this is I didn't buy my first car. My mom bought it for me.
Awesome.
And to be honest with you, I felt it was deserving because of how well I did in school. That was her gift to me. And granted, I got my D's and whatnot. I still graduated with honors. So she said, no, this is because you did well in school. You graduated with honors. You got into college. Here's your car. You have independence, but you're paying the insurance bill. I'm like, all right, that's cool. So all that happened. I'm back on the road. But what was interesting about that is that was my first experience of the feeling of victimization as a result of theft. And for anyone who's had their car stolen, broken into, or vandalized, this will speak directly to them. When you get your car back, you feel victimized. And I don't want to use this relation because it's very unfair for the people who go through this experience. But when I got my car back, I felt as if it had been erased, and it just didn't feel the same. So, I mean, you understand why I don't want to make that relation, but it's to that extreme that I want to
Just
use that
felt very
example.
violated.
Exactly. So it took me some time to grow fond of it once again, because when I got it back, I didn't want it anymore. I wanted to move on to another car. But eventually the feeling of wanting to fix it up came back, and I was just about to, and then I got involved in an accident on 710 South Freeway. And what happened there was I was in the far left lane. I was going to pick up my girlfriend so that we could go to my cousin's funeral. It was on the day of his funeral. And a vehicle had lost, no, a vehicle was on the side of the freeway. They were changing their tire, and some way, somehow, their tire got away from them and it rolled all the way over to the far left lane. So two cars in front of me, that vehicle stopped, and then the car in front of it stopped. And because we're all going 75 miles per hour, I stopped. But because of the speed that we were going, we got into an accident, and the vehicle behind me hit me. The vehicle that hit me took off. I don't recall what happened to the two vehicles in front. And I don't recall if I exchanged any insurance information, but I knew something was wrong. I got into an accident, and I was mechanically inclined enough then to see the thermostat gauge going up and thinking to myself, damn, I need to get off the freeway. So I started merging over to the far right lane. I got off on Florence. I got off on Florence. I drove down the street. I ended up parking the car at a Chuck E. Cheese. parking lot there, and I called my girlfriend and I told her, hey, I just got into an accident. I'm okay. I need you to come pick me up off of, oh, that's where it was, Atlantic and Florence at the Chuck E. Cheese. She said, okay. She drove from Long Beach, picked me up. From there, we went to the funeral. We were in that all day. And then later that evening, I went back to go have my car picked up so it can be towed home. And at that point, I was done with the car. I didn't want anything to do with it. But again, it's my only vehicle. I needed to go to school. I was probably working then. And I fixed it up with aftermarket parts. But at that point, I was done with the car. I didn't want it anymore. It was done. Fortunately, though, I was able to get it fixed correctly. I took it to an auto body shop. They realigned the radiator support and the hood. That way, everything fit fine. And I'm glad I went the honest route, if that's to say anything, because months down the line, I get a call from an insurance company, and they tell me, were you involved in an accident on such and such day? And I told them yes. And I asked them why. And they said, well, because that was my client's vehicle. And that's when I found out that they were changing the tire. It had went through all lanes of the freeway, and that was the cause of the accident. So he says, we want to compensate you for your accident. Do you have any receipts of the work you've done?
Well, yeah, I got receipts.
Yes, I do. And see, that's a good thing too, is that I've always been organized. So I have documentation of everything, even to this day. So I provided them all the receipts, and they reimbursed me. With that money, I was able to repaint the car. At that point, I had a black driver's side fender, a black hood, a black bumper, and a black radiator support. So I had everything color matched to white. And for me, that was the sign, like, okay, you got to get rid of the car now. You color matched it. It'll be more appealing to a buyer. Let it go. So I put it up for sale, and I put it up for sale on Craigslist. And at the same time, I was looking for another car. Initially, what I had wanted was a Prelude. Nah, I couldn't get a Nova. It was still out of my price range. But I wanted a Prelude. I wanted a BB6. However, they were still in the $5,000 range, and my budget was around $3,000. And I couldn't ask my mom for additional money. I didn't want to. I wanted to do this on my own. So I realized I couldn't get the Prelude. I found another Accord, which is this one. So I've owned this one since August 2006. Bought this one.
Where was it located?
This one was located out in the valley as well. And I want to say this one was Van Nuys, maybe Encino.
Okay.
And it was in good condition. It was a one-owner car. And the one I had bought previously as well was also a one-owner car. Bought it, brought it back home, and a couple of weeks later, the white Accord that I previously had ended up selling, and I was a one-person car. But at that point, I was also in a transition of hobbies, because prior to, I was a super shoe head. Love shoes, still love shoes. However, I haven't bought them in years. And I had to make a decision as to whether or not I wanted to still collect shoes, or if I wanted to move the direction of modifying cars. So I quit cold turkey buying shoes and started modifying the Accord then. And
what kind of shoes did you collect? Nikes?
Yeah, it was primarily Nikes, and I had a good shoe collection. For the fellow shoe heads that are here, I had a set of 94 Retro 2s. I had another set of 94 Retro 3s. I had an original set of AJKOs. I had Supremes. What else? I had some Avengers. Bunch of shoes. I probably had 60 at one point, and I'm like, I had to stop because buying shoes is expensive. People who modify their cars and buy shoes at the same time, I don't know how you do it, especially now with new releases dropping every week. But it was one or the other. I chose cars, and I'm very, very happy I did, because it resulted in meeting lifelong friends.
That's awesome, man. Yeah. I mean, it's expensive to collect shoes, but it's even more expensive to buy cars. So,
You know what though? It's not, because with shoe releases, you have multiple drops a month, and it's very easy to drop $800 a month, $800 a month, $800 a month.
mm,
Whereas with car parts, you're on the hunt for specific parts, and it doesn't pop it doesn't pop up all that often. So when it's there, you have the money to buy it. But in the meantime, it may take 6 months for you to find that part, and in that 6 months, you're still saving up. So you have a reserve, so to speak. Whereas with shoes, you don't have the opportunity to have a reserve.
yeah, that makes sense. So 2006, you pick it up. Vision for it was just what?
¿Qué pasó?
What was the vision for the car in 2006 when you get this one?
I didn't have a vision for the car then. I had a vision for my white car. My white car, it was going to be tinted windows, lowered on some mesh wheels, and that was that. It was going to be really, really simple. And what's funny about that is before I became familiarized with what we now all know as JDM, I'm like, I want a body kit, I want dual quad exhaust, and everything else. And the reason why was because my notion and understanding of an import was very much late 90s, 2000. And in 2004, that was on the tail end of what people want to identify as the Ricer era. And it was also the very beginnings of the JDM scene. So that was 2004. Then flash forward to 2006, JDM was very much relevant. And I didn't really want to start modifying my car until Honda Society. And then like that's for us, that means a lot. But for everyone watching, Honda Society is a forum that primarily specializes in the 94 to 97 Honda Accord chassis. And if there's any CD5 enthusiasts watching this, that's where you need to go. That's the Bible of the CD chassis, because anything and everything you want done has been done, and the information is on there.
Yeah, some of the pictures may not work, but
oh yeah,
all the information is there. How did you find HondaSociety.com?
By sheer luck. I have no idea how I found it. I've been trying to think of how I came across it, but I don't recall that memory. I just remember finding it, and it was an epiphany moment. It was like, oh shit, what the hell?
There's a bunch of dudes out there like this, yeah.
Yeah, the world is my oyster. It's very much relevant to me finding Honda Society, because I started seeing cars that I didn't know could be modified in such a manner. And people at that time, such as Jason Iacona, he was already a fixture at that time in 2006 when I joined, as was a couple other cats. And those are people who I looked up to in those forum days and eventually became good friends with as well.
Just to give a little background on some of you guys, he mentioned Jason, that's Iacona. Jason is definitely one of the OGs in the Accord community, and his story is super amazing because, if I'm not mistaken, he drives a 96, right?
I believe it's a 97.
97 or 96. I think it's 97. But he bought it brand new, and the story goes, as I remember reading on his, he doesn't have a formal build thread. He has a whole bunch of threads, and he's always on. Yeah. He's still to this day on. But the story goes that he was pissed that he had to work Christmas night. So as a gift to himself, the next day he went to the Honda dealership and bought that car. To this day, he still has it. Bags. Now he's doing some amazing stuff with the suspension. I mean, I think he's on his 4th or 5th H motor. The guy's insane, and he's a super DIY, and so super helpful in the Honda Society. So that's who Jason is. He's not a regular, like, you know, Ralph and myself who got the car, you know, 2000 and whatever, and then we just started learning. Like, this guy has had that car and has fixed it for so many years, and so that's who Jason is. And so then you find Honda Society, you're hooked, right? You're like, great, I got the knowledge, I got the pathway here. When does the actual car start getting modified, and what do you buy first?
Aside from tinting the car right away because I didn't want to get burned by the sun, the very first thing I purchased was a set of wheels, and it was actually the the transaction was trade plus cash because the individual was partying out. Actually, see if you remember this name. I may make it fit. Do you recognize that screening? All right. So this cat was one of the originals to really push low offset. And the wheels he had was a set of Sport Max 006. Sport Max is the original name of XXR. So I reached out to him because he was local. I told him, hey, I'm interested in getting the wheels. He said, okay, well, come by. Let me look at your OEM wheels, and if they're in good condition, then we can move forward with the transaction. Went to his place. He saw the wheels, saw they were in good condition. So we moved forward with the transaction. I traded my wheels plus cash, and I was rolling around on low offset wheels at stock height.
We've been there.
Super 4x4.
But you know what's funny? Okay, on that note, before you continue, I don't know about you, but I used to get the most enjoyment out of those purchases. And the car may not have looked great, but I remember like first putting on, ironically, the XXR 006, same wheels, on stock height. Now mine were black, so it kind of looked like it was like a maybe like a spare. But I remember being extremely happy just being able to have that, and it was it's an accomplishment,
Yeah, every step in modification is an accomplishment. And I wanted to save what I'm about to say for later on in the conversation, but it's good to bring up now. And it's the process of modifying a car is so much more than just modifying a car. I think it's building character because there's sacrifices and certain responsibilities that one learns when modifying a vehicle. You have to learn how to budget. If you want a certain part, hey, I got to work longer hours. And those build character. And that's why people identify so strongly with their cars. It's more than just a vehicle for them. It's a reflection of themselves, of course, but that's the persona of the car. This is me. This is what I worked diligently and hard for. And I can understand why people are emotionally attached to their vehicles, as am I, as all of us are.
Definitely. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So then the car starts getting modified. I know that you took it to a body shop. The car used to be black. How do you settle on, I guess, purple, right?
Yeah. So I continue modifying the vehicle. I'm on Honda Society, reading up, learning, just a sponge of information, which is why I have such a strong recollection of everything on Honda Society. But in any case, my senior year of college, 2009, I was already saving because I wanted to have the car repainted. And I was working two jobs. I was working my job with LA Rec and Parks, and then I was working with a professor at the university, helping him with his book. So I'm working two jobs, and one job was specifically for bills, gas, whatever, and then the other job was specifically for car parts. And mind you, at this time, I'm living at home, and my responsibilities were less than what they obviously are now. So I graduate, and then the very next month, I'm on the freeway. I'm actually about to go. I'm gonna go pick up my girlfriend. And mind you, the same girlfriend that picked me up when I crashed the Wide Accord is still my girlfriend. She's my now wife. And
so she listens to this. She knows exactly what we're talking about.
Oh yeah, exactly. So I'm on my way to go pick up my girlfriend, and we were gonna go. I forgot where we were gonna go, but we were. Let me go back a bit. I was gonna go pick up my girlfriend because I was gonna take her to work with me because my job at the time was in a teen summer camp. And that teen summer camp, we went on a field trip every single day. And the main person in charge of that program, she said, "Hey, if you want, take your girlfriend. We have extra tickets. It's fine with me." I'm like, "All right, cool. I'm broke. We can go out." So I went to go pick her up, and I was merging from the seventh. I was on the 710
That's
south.
710. Holy shit.
Yeah,
Avoid it. Avoid it.
I can't anymore, man. I live right next to it. So I was merging on the 710 south to the 60 west, and I was in my lane, and then on the other lane was an individual coming from the 710 north, also going on the 60 west. He he drifted into my lane, and he hit the driver's side quarter panel of the car. And I'm like, "Oh man, why do you have to hit the quarter panel? Like the quarter panel is the one part that I can't bolt off. If it was the door, I can bolt it off." Fortunately, he pulled over, I pulled over, we exchanged information, and I didn't know that he didn't have insurance, so I got lucky that he pulled over. So flash forward, um, yeah, flash forward maybe a month or two, and I had already received the money from the insurance company. I maintained a clean title on the vehicle. I don't know how I did that.
Wow.
And for some people they don't care, but for me, I do care for insurance purposes. And I had already decided, being that I was already thinking about going to paint, I knew the paint shop I wanted to go to. I knew the color, and I took it to Bazan Auto out in Pomona. And the reason I knew of this paint shop was because that's where Donnie had gotten his Accord painted. And Donnie, of course, was one of the OG cats who had an all authentic moving kit for the CD7. So I went out there, made my arrangements, and the car was there for the better part of a year. And as you know, I didn't just get one quarter panel replaced. I got both of them replaced because little to my knowledge, the passenger side had been involved in an accident before my ownership. And the only reason I knew that it was an accident is because when I tried rolling the fenders, it started cracking as a result of filler. So at that point, I'm like, "Oh, shoot." And the accident was a good thing in a way because they paid for paint, and all the money that I had saved for paint, I could then play with, and it was all going to go towards the car, which is what ended up happening. I got the car a year later. It's the current purple color that it is. It was on my C2s, which are my all-time favorite wheel. And the very next day, drove up to NorCal for a meet. And that was the first time I met all the Accord owners up in NorCal. And then that same day, drove down to Monterey because that's where my wife and my comadre that's where my girlfriend, now wife, and my comadre were staying at a hotel in Monterey because they were there for a convention within their field. And I drove down PCH the very next day, and that was my experience upon getting the car back after paint.
Yeah, I've read your build thread because now Jason doesn't have a build thread, but Scanlan is full. That's your username. Holy crap, you have an extent build thread, which I really enjoy because you're very meticulously taking a whole bunch of pictures, and your writing you're very well, very good at writing. And so thanks to Miss Price, now that we know, and you write like paragraphs explaining your thought process, and so I look forward to all of that. And so I do remember you taking a whole bunch of pictures by PCH. You wrapped that front end with the blue tape just to protect it, and yeah, the car was sweet, man. It looks so nice.
I wanted to make that drive again once I got the car back, but now it's not possible because I have responsibilities and my priorities have changed.
Mm-hmm.
But it'll be done down the line, whether it's 10 years from now when my son is older and him and I can just go rolling. But it's not something I plan on doing. It's something I will do, and I want to drive it all the way up to Oregon.
Oh shoot! All the way to Oregon.
I want to take it through the redwoods because the redwoods are beautiful.
Yeah, can't blame you, man. Wow. Let's do a short break so you can go to the restroom, or get water or
Old
sleep.
ass man.
It'll go for you. Are
¿Cómo
you
que
good?
yo, güey? Yo estoy bien.
¿Tú estás bien? Okay. Let me go with the
Go
little
ahead.
short break. Okay. So you drive the PCH route. What year was that? Do you kind of remember?
Yes, I can. It was 2010.
2010.
April 2010.
Okay. The reason I say that is because now you have that car. When are you done with college? Like everything.
Say that again?
When were you done with college? What year did you finish?
I graduated in 2009, May 2009.
Oh,
So yeah, June 2009, I get into the accident, and then May 2010, no, excuse me, April 2010, that's when I get the Accord back.
now you're quote unquote like no more school. Now you're just working. Now you can go all out on it.
Yeah, pretty much. Or
Okay.
as much as I still could afford at the time.
Oh yeah, most definitely. The reason why I asked you the year that you got it painted was 2012, first Cali Accord meet, right?
Let me see. We did IBOC. Yeah. HS did IBOC in 2010 and 2011. So 2012 was the first Accord meet, yeah.
Walk us through that. You don't need to go into the whole story about IBOC. I know it, but where does Cali Accord meet? How does that idea come to fruition?
Man, that's an interesting history. So the Cali Accord meet, for those who are unaware, is and was and will be an annual Accord meet just for Accord enthusiasts. And the reason, the way that came about was because in 2010, Honda Society decided to participate in the IBOC
So
meet.
you are gonna go there? You like? Sorry, go ahead.
No, I can give you the history and everything. So 2010, Honda Society decided to participate in the IBOC meet back when it was still at IBOC. And at the time, it was only the local guys from SoCal. And for the most part, anyone who's been to IBOC meets knows that it's heavy of Civic and Integra content. So of course, us being Accord guys, like, you know what, we're gonna make our presence known. And that first year in 2010, they believe it was 15, 16 Accords. And that was, to my knowledge, the most Accord that had ever showed up to IBOC.
Very well kept Accords, I might say.
Yeah, they were, and I think that's very important to say too. They weren't just generic builds. They were all builds of exceptional quality with good parts, and we wanted to make our presence known. The Accords are here and acknowledge us, I guess. So we go out there, we make our presence known, and it was a great event. Hot, but it was a great event. So we share the content on Honda Society, and one of the NorCal guys reaches out to me, Alan Kraft, who at the time was one of the co-founders of FFC, Stafford Customs, which is a company that specializes in Accord parts specifically for the CB and the CD community, but they also make Accord parts for the Accord chassis in general. In any case, he reached out to me and he said, "Hey, let's get more Accords out there." I'm like, "I'm down. Let's do what we got to do." So he said, "You corral the guys in SoCal. I'll take care of the guys in NorCal. We'll be the two heads going after this, and we'll do everything." I'm like, "All right, that's fine." And this was probably a month after IBOC, so we were already planning 10 months in advance, and we were building up hype, and we were telling people that we're going to go to IBOC in 2011, and people then started building for IBOC. But that's what people did in that specific time, is you build for IBOC. IBOC was the premier event during that time. And this was back when forums were alive and popping. This was when Honda Tech was at its prime, when HS was at its prime, when NWP, you had B20 VTech, even though it was full of scammers. All the OGs are probably laughing at that. And various other forums. Everyone built for iBox. So we're building up hype, and as the day comes closer, we started refining the details, until we finally until we started creating an agenda as to what was going to take place. And that consisted of the guys from NorCal driving down a day in advance, getting their cars in shape and do whatever needed to be done in preparation for the next day. We roll out to iBox 2011. We rolled out 30 deep, all great Accords, great looking Accords. And that year was crazy for iBox. It was the last year that iBox was at the iBox facility. Oh, wait. Hold on, Gus.
No problem. You can take that smoke. So,
you remember where I left off?
Yeah, so it was 30 cars you guys were preparing. Now, correct me if I'm not wrong, there was a VIP section, right?
Correct. It's a good thing you brought that up. So that was the first year that iBox had a regular registration section and a VIP section. And the VIP section was in the front of the facility where all the premier cars were. And I think one of the important things to note in that is that I was in charge of the logistics of everything. And I had set up where we were gonna meet. I put it on the map, be here at this location at this time, because we're rolling out at set time. And if you're not there, then we're leaving you. So we get into the iBox facility, 30 deep, we're all parked in front. That was the year that it rained. And I recall us having canopy set up. We were all just kicking it, having fun. I brought shaking dishes so that we can have hot, warm food, even though all the guys listening to this are like, Ralph, that chicken was cold, but they still ate it. And it was a great time. And what we were all anticipating was, because we rode in deep, because there were great cars, and mind you, at that, we had Sagar drive down from Toronto, Canada, all the way down to SoCal, and we had a couple other cats who drove from a great distance to participate at iBox 2011. So we were anticipating acknowledgement. Here comes all the iBox footage, all the iBox coverage, and no mention of the Accords. And to quote Michael Jordan, I took that personally. No, but seriously. But seriously, I took that personally, because we put forth all this effort and not a peep on the Accords that were there. And that was when Sun came out. Sun was there, and Sun is one of the first individuals to do a K-swap in his Accord. That's when Stuart still had the wagon. It was bagged on his raise. He had a busy motor header. I mean, everyone had great looking cars, no coverage. And I took that personally. And I'm like, you know what? Fuck iBox. We're doing our own shit, straight up. And I mean, if the organizers of iBox are watching this, I got love for you guys now. But at the time, it was motivation for me to do something just for us.
Now,
and
so hold on. I know there's a lot going on. Some of you guys may be thinking like, well, why the hell did you take your cars? Just so you can get some pictures out of it? You guys have to understand, it was a different time and different age group and different everything. One thing that, there's a lot of things that Ralph covered. One is like FFC, Fat Ford Customs. These are a company of these individuals who said, hey, there's no aftermarket support for the Accord like there is for the Civic and Integris. So let's start making our own parts. I mean, think about that for a second. It's quite, the core community, like I mentioned, it's small. And so when you're trying to build something, it's extremely hard to build a car because of the lack of aftermarket support. And so that's what it is. And you can, say it for yourself, but I'm going to take a shot at it. and you can definitely correct it so people don't understand that, don't think that it was like, oh, he's crying about a picture or a video and they didn't come out. It was more like, we as a core enthusiast, we understand that we're not driving the popular chassis. And not to say that there wasn't amazing cars there at that event that were civic interiors, I'm sure they were, but just as a core dudes and the work that went behind it, to have somebody, drive from the Pacific Northwest up to Canada for this event, 30 cars deep, and it feel like you guys didn't get, some type of, love, showing up to and supporting a big event, it can be difficult. And hence why I tell you guys, I always show every single car for that reason. You don't know where people are driving from, whether the car's clean or not clean. In this case, I've seen pictures of the cars that were there, and they were obviously well executed. But it goes back to that, like, it does hurt. It does hurt when you go to an event and you see very specific people be getting some coverage. And so obviously, if you're part of that coverage, whether picture or video, you're like, great, my car came out even if it was for 2 seconds. But if you're not, it's that, like, damn, like I worked hard, and so 30 cars is a big number. So I can understand where you're coming, Ralph. So you say F it.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'll just say it also wasn't about, I guess to clarify your point also, it wasn't about the validation of the cars themselves. It's that we wanted acknowledgement from the community, and in a way, we wanted acceptance from the community, which was civic and integrity. Like, hey, the Accords showed up, and they made their presence known. They have good cars. That's all. That's what we wanted. We didn't want the validation, and we didn't want the individualism and validation. We wanted just the acknowledgement and recognition, and we didn't feel as if we received that. So that's the reason we decided to throw our own event. And fortunately, my colleague Alan felt the same way. He was upset about that, and he said, we got to do our own thing. I'm like, I'm down. So it was him and I, and it was his idea to bring in the third founding member of Cali Accord Meet, and that's our homeboy Sagar from Canada, from Toronto, Canada, the guy who drove down from Canada to SoCal for IBOC 2011. So together, we started exchanging messages and whatnot. We had a foundation of what we wanted to do, and moving forward, it was, okay, we're going to do this legit. We're going to get permits. We're going to promote it, and we're going to do everything that needs to be done for an organized event. And again, this is working 12 months out in advance. We chose a date. I told him I will pick the location. I'll do all the permit work. And this is why I brought up it was important. The logistics factor was important because I'm good at that. And I don't mind doing permits. And I'm very familiar with working with the bureaucracy. That doesn't faze me. I know how to get in and out of that. So we started moving forward. Once we had the details down, I started promoting on all the popular Accord forums back in the day. So Honda Society, CD7 Tuner, B6P, myagent.com. And there was another one for 7th Gens, which name escapes me, but I promoted on all of those. And it was Accords only. And what made that event different from a meet, even though it's called Cali Accord Meet, is that people had to pay for registration. And that registration went towards the permitting for the event, in addition to the shirts that we planned on giving the attendees for participating. That event took place May 2012. The first one was at Griffith Park. And
now, hold on. I think you're skipping a big little detail there.
Demon.
When was it hosted? What was the day?
Say it again?
When was it hosted? When was the day? If I'm not mistaken, wasn't it the same date as IBOC?
You know what? I don't think it was.
It wasn't? I thought it was. Because I know a couple of years you guys did on the same day of IBOC, right?
No, I don't think so. It No, I don't think so, to be honest with you.
Because Ibach is
But
when
I,
you're like, I haven't been back there since that time, so I don't know.
well, the reason I say I don't know is because 2011 was the last year IBOC was held at IBOC facility, and that's when the city of Corona shut them down because it was such a large event that the city could no longer support that event because of the trash, the traffic, and it took away a large part of Corona's resources, primarily the local police department. And Corona said, you know what, you no vale la pena. You guys, we're not allowing you here anymore. And that's when they started looking at other facilities. So because of them looking at other facilities, they had to change the date, and it was no longer the same time frame as it had previously been 5, 6, 7 years earlier. So that's the reason that is fuzzy in my memory.
Oh, okay. So yeah, because the first Cadillac Corby was at Griffith Park. I ended up going with my then girlfriend, now wife, oh my buddy CB7. It was cool to see how many cars showed up to that first one.
I believe it was 80.
It was way less than that. The very first one. Very first one was way less than that.
Nah.
Yes.
Nah.
Yes.
Nah.
The second year was probably around
you know
80.
Maybe 69, 70, something like that. In any case, it was still the largest Accord meet.
It was pretty small. It was pretty small. I'll tell you that much. Because now for me, I was super excited. But I remember like I went and took some pictures. It was the first year. The second year, the third year exploded. That's the reason why you just couldn't hold it at the park anymore.
Mm-hmm. No, we were still able to do it at the park the second year. But I guess the premise of that first year was to establish ourselves, because so many individuals want to throw meets and events, but what they lack is the organization and structure. And I knew we had that down. And because we had that down, we could flourish and grow, which is eventually what we ended up doing. So if we had a great, successful first meet, then the coverage from that would again create hype for the second year. And a big part of that also was we owed it to the participants and attendees, because at that point we weren't using our ticketing system. We were having people PayPal us the money, and we were doing everything manually. So people are giving you their hard-earned money, and you owe it to them to have a successful, organized event. And again, I took that personally, because if I'm that individual, I want my money's worth, and I want to give these people their money's worth. And I think that creating that trust from the very beginning, in its inception, is a big reason why we were able to be so successful year after year after year.
It blew up.
It did. It did.
It blew up. I remember the third year specifically. It was you couldn't. It was the lines and lines of Accords and all gens. I mean, it just blew up. That's what I'm telling you. Like the first year, I remember it was small. Like it was, but by small, I don't mean 5 cars. I mean, compared to the other years, especially in Long Beach, San Pedro.
It was close. The first year was close to 70 cars. Now that I thought about it, it was close to 70 cars. But after, I can't remember the numbers in between. But the first year was 70 cars. The very last year we did it in 2018, it was 230 people registered. We had less people show up, but we had 230 people registered. So we anticipate when we do it again that we'll probably have close to 300 Accords, Accords.
Yeah, it's wild to say the least. Yeah, you took the initiative. You did that. I mean, I still have a couple Cadillac Corby shirts, and it was super rad, man. It was super rad to see the cars. That's when I first saw your car in person. You had those Tiffany blue wheels, and
my raised VRX 10s.
Mm-hmm. And I saw some cool cars, man. I think if I'm not one that definitely blew my mind. If I'm not mistaken, it was the first year. DJ's sedan. I mean, that thing was slam. It was Goldfish Surge all the way from
Yeah,
Washington.
yeah, he
It,
drove down from Washington.
he didn't have the flares back then. The car looked very clean. I mean, so all these different builds that you've seen on the forum, not even social media, Instagram, on the forum now they were right there, and I was like, damn, like I just kept looking at them, and it was cool to see the progress of that. I mean, now obviously it's been a couple of years. Yes, stop. You said it is, and it will be. So we are gonna have another Cali Core meet, or is it the Core Collective, or what is it?
Well, on that topic, Cali Accord Meet eventually transformed and transitioned into a more collective name, no pun intended. We changed the name from Cali Accord Meet to the Accord Collective, and we went with that name because if you look up the definition of Accord, the Accord is well, not the car itself, but the word
Word.
Accord itself. It's basically a collective. It's a gathering in a group of people, which makes it fitting because that was very much what CAM slash the Accord Collective was built around. That's its foundation, and that's when we changed the name. And also because we had wanted to begin organizing events in other states. We did so in Washington. We had wanted to in Florida because at the time in Florida it was AFM. Do you remember?
Mm-hmm.
And then AFM, it started dwindling in attendee participation, so we wanted to take it over and give it the respective resurgence that it deserved because that was a motivating factor for us. AFM was important to us because that was the premier Accord meet before Cali Accord meet. In any case, the Cali Accord meet changed to the Accord Collective. We wanted to do meets in other locations, and it was more encompassing of all those events. So Cali Accord meet fell under the umbrella of the Accord Collective. The Northwest Accord meet fell under the umbrella of the Accord Collective, and same thing with Florida when we had wanted to do it. I completely deviated from the original question that you asked. And it was in regards to...
No, but it's good because it's funny how like you guys started doing it all, in the corners of the U.S. Because I wasn't even thinking about Pacific Northwest. That's a whole different conversation all of its own. But we are gonna have another collective meeting.
We're really, really, really pushing for it. I want to say we're closer this year and at this time than we were 2 years ago. And ultimately that was all because we got burned out. We were burned out. There's a lot of organizing that's involved in planning these larger meets. And for people listening and watching this YouTube video, we did it legit. We got insurance in the instance that someone got into an accident, your car was covered. We had a fire marshal there. We had LAPD there. We closed off one side of the road. That way, when we were doing check-in, we would have cars pull up there for the staging area, so we would be out of the way of the main road. So we didn't bring onto us unnecessary attention from LAPD. Then we had music, we had catering, we had raffles. We tried to be as organized as possible. And of course, the more people you have, the more money that's necessary to keep it functioning. And it burned us out. And 2018 was the last time we had done it. And at that point also, we were all very much in a different part of our lives. My co-founder, Alan, he was in upper management position, and it was getting difficult for him to juggle the organization of CAM and work. And then myself, I just paid off my loans. I was engaged, so I knew my next steps were, okay, the wedding, buying a house, living together, everything else. Our other co-founder, Sagar, he was also in the process of getting married, and I think at this point he had also become the chief executive officer of his company, so he was a CEO. And then another person that we brought in to be part of the organizing, Ed, White Bordeaux J Swap, he was in the process of getting married, or he was already married and he was expecting his first kid. And then another very important member was Jenny. Jenny was in charge of the merchandising and design. And if anyone who attended CAM remembers registering and us giving your shirts, she was the person handling all that. But she was also considering having another child. So we were all at different points in our life, and we needed a break. And I had considered it in 2020 and even pre-COVID, but I didn't move forward with it because I wasn't motivated. That fire wasn't reignited the way it was when I had begun. And fast forward a year later, especially because of COVID, because people yearn and are yearning to be back out and wanting to see cars, it's reignited that fire in me. And also I have the time. I've accomplished everything I wanted to do. So I want to put my best foot forward and continue bringing together the Accord community, because it's never been about me, to be honest with you. I can care less about the validation. I don't want the attention. What I want is
the Hoonigans
Accord community.
The Hoonigans would say otherwise, but okay.
¿Qué pasó?
The Hoonigans would say otherwise.
Yo, man, that's just coincidence.
Dude, I was waiting so long for you to say that because I was like, I'm gonna say it. And you said it. No, I'm kidding. For those that don't know, Rob happened to go to, I don't know, I think it's their facility in Compton. And I think there's a wall. He took a picture there and they reposted him on their like 3.4 million Instagram page. And so everybody was like, oh, that's Pearl Coupe, you know? And so,
but if you notice, who did they tag in that photo?
That Core Collective.
It wasn't me.
Yeah, but then the comment section mentioned that they knew who it was.
I did that intentionally, though. I don't want the attention. I don't care for the attention because I do what I do and build for myself. Simple as that. Because the people who know about the Accord are my close circle of friends, including you and the rest of the guys down here in SoCal, NorCal, and internationally. I don't share very many photos of my car. When I do share on Facebook, I'll delete the photo 12 hours later because I don't want it out there, primarily because I don't want sellers capitalizing off of me. The sellers don't deserve to capitalize off of my hard work. That's my car. I capitalize off of it.
That's a whole different conversation.
Yeah.
So where are we at before we move on to another topic? So the Accord Collective, what can we expect? When can we expect it? I
can't say. I have a location in mind. It's not gonna be at the same location that we had done previous years because we outgrew we've outgrown that location. Yeah. We outgrew it the very first year, to be honest. I have another location in mind. I have to see where the management of that location stands with events right now because of COVID, because that's still very much in effect. But the benefit of that is the management of that location I happen to be affiliated with and work with. So I can communicate with them one-on-one. I can build a personal relationship. And that was instrumental in CAM and the previous venue locations. The first one being Griffith Park. When we did it at Griffith Park, I was working in Griffith Park. So the permitting process and everything, I could fudge the permitting details because I knew the person there. So instead of paying thousands of dollars, it would be significantly less. And then when we were at San Pedro, it was still through Rec and Parks. I knew the management of there, so they would work with me. In comparison to if we went out to a private venue, there's no personal relationship there, and it's very businesslike, and I'm okay with that because I know how to build that rapport, but it makes it difficult. So now that's what I've been doing and I'm doing, is continuing to build that rapport so that when we do decide to move forward and announce it officially, it'll be because we have everything in motion, and when we're doing it, we're doing it.
That's dope, man. Well, keep us updated because we're definitely going to try to, go there. Yeah, definitely, man. That's super cool. So right now let's talk about your car, because your car, man, holy shoot. It's gone through so much. A big thank you would be to Works from Anaheim. Daniel did an amazing job. But so now let's kind of discuss your thought process on the actual Accord. When does the idea, because you've had it for such a long time, and you've maintained, you're like super stickler. For those that don't know, Ralph is like extreme stickler when it comes to cleanliness and organization. I mean, this is in all areas of his life, but obviously I've been able to see builds and threads on the society of him cleaning the car, just cleaning the cars. And so when does the car go into this last phase that it went through? Because I didn't know it was going to go through that extent of
You mean
changes.
to like Daniel?
Daniel, the power coating, I mean everything.
Your watchers are probably thinking, well, if he's such a stickler, why does he have a Starbucks cup on top of the hood of his car? And that's because I haven't detailed the paint. The paint is swirled, so me vale madre right now until I do it. It is what it is. But it's the car has been.
Oh, by the way, on that note, you said that once you get a detail, you're gonna be on the channel?
Say it again?
You said that once you get a detail, you're gonna be on the channel?
If I'm a detail, ¿qué?
But once you get the car detail, you're gonna be on the channel.
Oh yeah, because no, for sure.
He's a liar.
No, absolutely, because I want to give you my best, Gus, because you deserve that. I want to give you my best.
Thank you.
La neta. So the car has been under various phases of construction, so to speak, over the past 10 years. A lot of wheel choices. So following 2010 to 2012, I was daily driving the Accord, and once it had been repainted and whatnot. And on one particular night, I was driving it after my sign language class, and the caliper fell off of the bracket, and it fudged up the inner barrel of my Racing Heart C2. It was bad, and fortunately, I was on my way to my girlfriend's house in Long Beach, and she was behind me, and the caliper fell off. The rotation of the wheel ripped off the brake line, and the ABS went off, and it was bad. So she noticed she noticed what happened. I turned on my emergency lights right away. She stopped, and it prevented my vehicle, with the Accord, being hit from behind. And this was at night too, probably 9:30, 10 at night.
Wow, I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah, I came to the realization then that I could no longer daily drive the Accord. It wasn't feasible. I couldn't afford to have a modified vehicle as a daily driver. And that was when I decided to buy my first beater. My first beater being, of course, another CD. It's the only sedan I've ever owned, and it was a DX model, and it was a piece of shit.
Love it.
And I say that because I originally was gonna buy that car for the wheels and tires, for the OEM wheels and tires. And I asked the owner, how much do you want for the whole car? And he said, throw me a number. I'm like, $500. And he said, oh, how about so-and-so? I'm like, all I got is 500. You either take it or you leave it. And I bought it at night. And this seems to be a recurring theme with some of your people that you've interviewed.
Okay,
but
so you said great builders, just poor timing. You guys are so, like, let me get it right now.
yes and no. I was desperate at the same time because I needed another car. I ended up getting the car. Estaba mugroso adentro. Nasty, nasty, nasty.
Oh, it's an understatement because yeah, I've seen the pictures and
Yeah.
everything. Yeah.
So to give people a visual as to how nasty it was, there were maggots inside of the cabin of the vehicle. And for some people, that's like, nah, yeah, no, I'm done. But I'm like, okay, it is what it is. These are the circumstances that I have. I need to make the best of it. And I ripped out the entire interior, the carpet, the seats, the panels, and I detailed everything. I rented a wetback from the Albertsons at the time, and I power washed the carpet, and then I went over it with the wetback. That way, it could suck up anything from the maggots. And I power washed and used a wetback on the seats. I thoroughly, thoroughly, thoroughly went over the interior of the vehicle, and I didn't care about the outside because when you think of it, the cabin of the vehicle is where you spend the majority of your time. So I wanted to be comfortable inside the car. I don't care how the outside looks. And when it was all said and done, the interior was, in all honesty, immaculate. It was in great, great condition, and I used it for what it was.
Which is the daily. So then you
Yeah.
have the daily. That happened. I'm glad you're okay. What spirals after that for the coupe?
With the well, I don't know. With the coupe, it was more so buying parts, but then because I no longer had to daily drive it, I could pay more attention to it. I could I could address the aesthetics of it like I had always wanted to, in particular the paint. And I started learning how to detail. And one of the guys from NorCal, Sushi Boy, he was a detailer, not by trade, but it's just something that he picked up along the way. And he was my mentor in detailing, like, hey, this part isn't working, or excuse me, this isn't working for me. What can I do? And he would break it down. And for anyone who's really delved into detailing, it's fairly comprehensive. It can be daunting, but I was able to navigate through it by the machine, by the compound. And it's one thing to recognize is I tell people who first start off with detailing that not every paint is the same way. Some paint may require it to be some paint requires it to be worked aggressively, whereas other paint is very soft. And if you go an aggressive method, you can do damage to your soft paint. So there's a huge learning curve that you're going to learn through experience, and I definitely learned with this car. But I was able to refine my detailing skills practicing on the Accord until I finally got it down and I know what works for the Accord. So I've detailed it multiple times in my 10 years of ownership. The last time I detailed the Accord, it was wheels off, headlights off, tail lights off, bumpers off. I did everything section by section, and I spent 40 hours detailing it.
You're insane.
But it looked great. The paint popped, the paint did justice, and when you saw the car, it wasn't just clean in the sense of, oh, it's a clean car. When people what I wanted is for people, when they refer to my car as clean, to be in a sense of free of dirt. That's what I really wanted for my car. And right now it's not in that shape. It is what it is, but I'm gonna get to it. But now I know it's gonna take the next time I detail this car, in all honesty, it's gonna take close to 60 hours.
So then so just say we're never gonna have them on the channel. Just say it like that then.
No, it'll be done because I've been thinking about the methodology as to how I want to approach this detail, and it'll be more comprehensive. It just will, because I'm gonna ceramic coat the car, and now that I have a garage, I can store the car indoors, whereas before it was stored outdoors under tents, under two canopies. I always took care of the paint.
That's funny. So he has to get an idea as to what I mean. He's like super OCD about the cleaning and other aspects. So then, how do you move forward? Because obviously the car now is manual. It used to be automatic. When does that whole idea start kind of hitting your head? Like now's the time to move forward with this.
This was probably around 2015, 2016 is when I started driving the Accord less. And a big reason, well, two big reasons was it was parked in the backyard of my parents' house. It was a pain in the butt to get out. For friends who had been there, and they would often think to themselves, how the hell do you get the car in and out? It was a mission. So that deterred me from driving the car. And also the car wasn't in the best mechanical shape. At that point, the car was showing its age, and it still retained a lot of the OEM components that were original to the car. And at this point, the car was 20 years old, and for me not to address any of those components was negligent. So I didn't want another incident like what happened with me when the RL caliper fell off and messed up my C2. So I decided I'll drive it less. I just won't drive it at all until it's ready to go. And that's when I started saving money. I started formulating ideas in my head as to what I wanted to do, buying parts, seals here and there. And for anyone who wants to build a car, I would say make a list. Big Mike has talked about this on his podcast, and it's very true. Make a list of what you want, because it's very easy to become distracted of what route you want to go when you're building a car. And if you have a list, it's in writing, it's somewhat in concrete, so to speak, and you know what you want to do. It helps you to not deviate from the long-term goal and executing said goal. So let's move forward. 2018, 2019. I had already been speaking with Daniel of WordWorks as to what I wanted to do. And he said, whenever you're ready. And finally, I pulled the trigger on him, like, yo, let's do it. He's like, okay, let's do it. So I took the car, pulled the motor, the next week, dropped it off back where I got the car painted at Bazan Auto, got the engine bay color match. And in the meantime, I had already had all the parts, new inner and outer tie rods. I got the steering gearbox rebuilt, and the engine itself, I hand scrubbed by hand. A lot of people like to spray paint it, and I give credit to Corwin for actually saying this. He is against people spray painting their engine, because down the line, the finish of the spray paint wears off, and it looks tacky, and it takes away from the engine visually. So I didn't want that, and I decided to hand scrub the entire block and the transmission by hand. And I wanted that OEM new look, the original finish. And I'm very happy I went that route, because it adds to the OEM quality of the car. And you definitely know about this, because Francisco went the same route with your engine. Did he spray paint it or no?
No, I don't think no.
So it just the original finish of the cast head and engine, it looks great if you clean it well. And that's what I wanted. I think it looks great.
Francisco, if you're listening to, you better not spray paint mine. I'll send it back to you. You gotta clean it by hand. No, I don't think spray paint it. Nah.
Mm-hmm. So
he would have charged me more, and I would have been like, nah, leave it as is. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, but that just speaks to the meticulous nature I have with the Accord. It's very personal, it's very hands-on, and I wanted a certain look, and that was the extent to which I was willing to go for that very specific look. It took me a long time to clean the engine block, but it was well worth it. And what's funny about that is I was going to keep the Accord automatic. And eventually I happened to come across a manual transmission. And this happened when Miguel decided to part with his Accord so that he could have funds to attend dental school. So I'm like, all right, cool. You're gonna sell the Accord? Yeah, we'll take it off your hands. So Daniel and I split the funds. We bought the car, and he had a lot of good parts that came with the Accord. And I ended up parting out the Accord, and I feel sorry for Miguel. I'm like, oh, I parted out your car. But part of that package was a manual transmission and also innovative mounts, one of which was an auto to manual bracket. And I figured, hey, if I already have the auto to manual,
if you have a bracket, might as well do a whole 5 songs.
Yeah, and the transmission, I might as well do it. And of course, that's obvious how these Accord guys are, like, fucking route, just do it. You already have it. So I'm like, okay, como pendejo, and I ended up going that route. And I think that was also extremely important, sticking with the single cam, because both you and I know the individuals who are J-swap and K-swap and boosted y todo que madre. And I could have gone that route because I have the resources to do so in terms of the knowledge, but I didn't want to spend the additional money. That was going to be an extra $5,000 that, again, I could put towards this car, towards the Cadillac behind me. And I wanted to just finish the Accord so that I can move on to the next project. That was extremely important. So we got the engine bay color match, cleaned the block. Daniel hooked it up, and Daniel did me a huge solid because at the time that I had taken the Accord, I believe it was December 2019, the plan was to be very hands-on. And once COVID happened, I had already shared with Daniel that we were expecting our first child. So with us expecting our first child, my wife and I had to very much take into consideration the health of my wife. And I didn't want to potentially expose my wife, especially being pregnant. And I told him this. And Daniel very graciously said, you know what, Ralph, don't worry about it. I'll handle it. I'll take care of it. Just whatever I need, pay for it, and it is what it is. I'm like, thank you. So I owe a big debt of gratitude towards Daniel, because from that point forward, he built the engine bay and everything else around it. And it wasn't simple, even though it was single cam. He wire tucked it for me, even though that wasn't the original plan, because Daniel's philosophy was, well, if I'm gonna go through all that work, I'm not gonna do it so the wires are showing. I'm gonna wire tuck him. All right, do what you want to do. We wire tucked the ABS lines, and if Corwin's listening to this, my ABS still works, because he wanted me to delete it. He's like, why do you still have the ABS if it doesn't? It's visually it's unsettling. I'm like, it still works. I'm not gonna take it out. And to this day, it still works. I'm gonna keep it. He tucked the ABS lines. What else did he do? All the steering components, all the suspension components. He did all of that when I wasn't able to, because he understood I had something else that was more important. So I owe a debt of gratitude to Daniel for that, definitely.
That was, you don't find that in somebody, to take care of you like that. I can definitely agree when it comes to that sentiment. Francisco over FM Spec did the same exact thing. He said, don't worry, everything and anything you need, I'll take care of it. He ordered it. I just send him the money, and everything he did perfectly. So that's pretty cool that, there are people like that you can trust fully, that they're going to do things in their best of your interests, most importantly. I don't mind you staying with a single jingle. I think everybody's always quick to say go H, right? Especially in that Cord platform. H22 is the way.
Yeah, and what car ended up going H?
The van.
Of all cars, the daily driver.
The van. Yeah, because you also have an Odyssey, which looks nice. It's lower. It has an H23. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, H23.
Yeah, so obviously that's a whole different shebang. I don't know why you even did all that to that, but so then the unique part about this is you don't just like do things like, I guess, the route that I did, just replace. Then you start kind of saying that, I don't know, you have too much money in your hands or something, and you start power coding parts. I mean, you definitely went more than I would ever even imagine. Um, Me going with Jackie and you with your Accord. How did that idea come about? Why don't you just kind of got everything new and put it and look OEM?
Well, it still technically is OEM. It's just higher quality of OEM.
OEM look, fool. You know what I mean? I mean,
Yeah.
your oil freaking pan is bright blue way. Like, your oil pan is blue way. You took it to get a power quinter, right? Is that the...
Yeah. My thought process for that was I wanted I wanted for when the Accord, the car was on the list, to still look visually appeasing on the bottom as it did from the side or the top, which is why I wanted to I powder coated my oil pan the same color as the other contrasting pieces of the Accord. And of course, to add to that, you have the stainless steel moving header that I got polished. You have the exhaust work that was done by Wisecraft, the vibrant resonator, and of course the moving exhaust. The Accord needs to be as thorough in every aspect of the build as it was visually. And that was extremely important to me because I didn't want a car to be, oh, it's only good from the outside if it has X, Y, and Z wrong. Because a lot of people do build in that sense. They want the car to be visually appeasing, but it's lacking mechanically. And I just didn't want that for myself. And again, I wanted it to be dependable. It needed to be extremely dependable. Before it was dependable, but I worried about it breaking down on me. Now, the car I know will never let me down. I can take it anywhere. It won't overheat. I won't lose oil. Nothing like that.
Yeah, you replaced every single aspect of it, man. You definitely went above and beyond with that car. Man, it's crazy. So, like I said, you at one point you said, "I'm not going to spend more money on that car." That was way before you did any of this.
Well, technically, I was right. I didn't spend any money on your car. Other people spent their money on. So that brings up another point that I want to actually talk about was people say that building cars is a bad financial investment or decision, and I disagree with that. And one argument I would say is if you build in quality parts, then in the instance you do want to ever part with your build because you did use quality parts, those quality parts that you use are either going to retain their market value or they're going to increase in market value. So no matter what, you're always going to get back what you put into it, if not come out in the positive. In addition to that, I buy parts and I flip them. For many years, I was flipping RL calipers, and then now it's primarily 5-lug Odyssey knuckles, and I can ship those nationally because I know other people can't beat my shipping rate. And a lot of people don't want to ship 50-pound knuckles to the East Coast because they know it's going to cost $50 to $75. And for me, it'll be $25, and I can provide a service and at the same time use the profit margin from that sale and reinvest it into the Accord. So it took a while to create a reserve, but that reserve paid for the Accord, while my money that I gained from my 9 to 5, so to speak, was reinvested into other things, bills, house, etc.
That's cool, man. Yeah, so you definitely flipping parts like the visors that you stole from me.
No, mom, his way. I'm lucky. No. I'm lucky. All right.
For those that don't know,
this is what happens when you're not on Facebook, fool. That's your pedo.
I'm not on Facebook except when I get inspired to go look for a '63 Impala. But yeah, I have a Facebook, but I don't use it. And so today, one of the subscribers / Instagram followers, he took a screenshot. He's like, "Hey man, I thought I would share this. I don't know if you were in the market for them." And as soon as I saw them, I was like, holy crap, they're authentic, they're coupes. And I jump on the computer, I'm like, can you find them? And then finally I find them, and then I see the comment section. And I see familiar names, and I'm like, and I see Ralph right there. Hey, save them for me. I gotta buy it. It's done. I still DM the guy. I sent him a message saying, are they available? I don't know if he responded or not because I knew they were gone. And that's when I DM'd you. I was like, hey, those are my visors, man. Because funny enough, I had advisors. I bought them from Manan. But
oh, nice.
Oh yeah, and that's so nice because one day it was my fault. I was looking for I was cleaning out the garage and I put them on the ground for whatever reason. And my wife went to get something and she lost her balance. When she kind of tried to regain it, she stepped on something that cracked. And I knew it was that. There's nothing else more fragile than that. And when I saw them, I was like, so I told her, I said, this you don't understand how like it's one of those like in the words of Michael Jordan, I took that shit personally. I'm like, you don't understand how rare these freaking parts are. And honestly, I wasn't even planning on running them. I just wanted to have them because they're like one of those pieces that you're like, yeah, man, it's like unicorns. You talk about them, but you never see them. And and Miguel had offered his, but I said, no, sell them at a better price because they're hard to find. So Miguel did, try to hook me up one time, but I'm not about getting free parts. I've gotten some free parts, and I just don't like that. And Adam sold me his, and yeah, man. So I told my wife, whenever these ones pop up again, I don't care, whatever the price is, I'm gonna jump on them. And
the next set I find, they're yours. I'll claim them, but they're yours.
Just give me the ones that you bought brand freaking new. I can't even fathom. I don't even care about the price, which is a whole different idea that you got them for, dirt cheap. The fact that you found them new.
2 sets.
Two sets?
I have 2 brand new sets of coupe visors.
I hate you, man. Hate you.
You know what? So I've actually had 3 sets of brand new coupe visors in my duration of being an Accord enthusiast.
That's horrible, man. I don't know how you do that, but I'm not trying to get mad. I already got mad over the parking issue that I had earlier before we started the podcast. I'm not even gonna talk about the freaking visors no more. The fact that you have.
But you know what though, Gus? You and I are. It's gonna be easier for you and I to come up on parts than the average individual because we're in that inner circle. You know just as well as
don't say that I'm in the inner circle because I'm not in no inner circle.
No, it's not full. You know all the same people I know. The same people I know.
No. I'm gonna be honest.
Yes.
No, I'm not. And that's and I don't mean that in a good way, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I like where I stand. I'm in no little inner circle. I'm not in no DM groups. I don't want to be part of them. I'm not in the Facebook groups. I don't know about the deals. I don't know about who's doing what. I'm not. I may know a few of them, but not in that whole little inner circle. So that's extremely important for people to recognize because there's a big difference, and you know that. And that's something that I've had chats with people that are inner and not in it, and I'm like, you know what? I'm good where I'm at. I know a few people, but definitely not that in the inner circle. So just kind of clarification, Ralph.
Okay, well, the point I wanted to raise was the more rare parts and sought after parts aren't typically sold outside of that circle to the public. They go from hands to hands within the people that we know. So all the people who do have coupes and are going to part out in the near future, they're going to offer it to us first, like, hey, I'm going to part out, let me know what you want from the car, and then that's where we can say, hey, yeah, give me the coupe visors, one of the guys down here wants them. Yeah,
so that's what I was going to tell you. I'm not part of that group, so that's the major difference. Like you are in the know who's parting out, who's doing this, who's doing that. I'm not, and I'm okay. I'm not saying I want to be. I'm just saying there's a big difference because I am the average Joe Schmo, whatever, and I'm okay with that. I mean, I'll give a quick example. I didn't know that Serge's coupe Goldie was going J series, so when I saw it, I was like, "Oh, that's freaking cool." Now, Serge is super supportive on the forums. He has an uploading just because it takes more time to upload to Flickr and blah blah. Instagram, he's just doing his own thing, so he doesn't upload those. So I'm not on Facebook. I don't know if he's on Facebook. So when I first saw his
He's
car,
too busy posting on his OnlyFans.
I think that's what he is. Hey, he looks good though. He looks good. And so when I saw when I was J Series, it's like, no way, you went J Series. And then, he says something that kind of reinforces what I'm saying. He goes, "Oh yeah, man, it was pretty much like a known because as soon as Alex was parting out his car, yeah, I jumped in it." And I was like, "Oh, well, that's cool." I mean, I didn't know. I mean, everybody else knew. That's fine. I mean, but that's a major difference. The difference is that I get where you're coming from. I'm not that into the little, tight knit of people that has ability to know who's gonna part out, who's not. But I am part of the, I guess, the additional layer. For instance, DJ always pressing me to sell him the JTTC from Lip, and I'm like, I'm not gonna sell it, dude. Even if I don't rock it.
Wait, DJ wants the JTCC from Lip? Oh, we can get him. I don't know. I'm surprised he hasn't mentioned it.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, so hey, if you find another one, let me know, because
What, the authentic one or the replica one?
Rev. I'm good with Revo. I'm not like you. When I see see, we can talk for 8 hours because you're like you're one of those dudes that has like authentic. I mean, if you were to take a picture of the stuff that you have in your garage, it's just too much. And the fact that they're authentic, kudos to you. I've always said it. Kudos to people like yourself who are all about authenticity. I can't do it, nor do I want to, pursue that. And that's obviously what makes your build, different than Jackie, But yeah, if you come across a JTCC from Lip, let me know. Sorry, DJ.
I mean, well, I'll find one easy. I'm positive about that.
See, again, the difference. So that car gets done. The Pearl Coupe gets done. Man, it's extremely clean, and I'm so glad that you got it. Now you just need to drive it a little bit more. Obviously, I've been able to see it, if I'm not mistaken, only once at the one Cars and Coffee that we had in Long Beach, and so we actually drank tea and we had some good combos, and so I didn't get to see the whole entire car, but the additional changes that you've done, such as the seats, I know that some people are like, oh, they just Recaro, tan seats or whatever the name is. But those are seats that you were looking for ages. I mean, you put it out there. I mean, talk about putting it out there in the universe. You put it out there in the Honda Accord forum. I can't remember when. I mean, it's been a long time. And the fact that you have them, the fact that you stuck with the tan interior, I can't think of anybody else that fits perfectly with the tan interior because you keep it clean. So I'm glad that you had that. Now, the Accord seems to be good. It's never going to be done. You have a whole bunch of parts. We know that. Tell us a little about the lowrider. I mean, because that's another thing that you did. You started the lowrider thread on the Honda Society forum, and it was a way for you to kind of get motivated, show some builds. And so now you went I wouldn't say opposite, but you went the unusual route, such as myself. I went the Impala, right? That's like the staple of lowrider. You went with the Caddy. Tell us a little about the story, why that car, because you've been infatuated with that car. Like you took pictures of that at one time. It's a specific picture where the car is turning right. It looks so sleek, and I think you posted that picture like 2 or 3 times. And that's always been the picture. And you're like, my car's gonna be like that. Where did this love for that fleetline?
Man, so the lowrider story it's near and dear to my heart. And the whole reason I became interested in cars was because of lowriders. I was first introduced to lowriders by my uncle. And my uncle, my Tío Bear, he's a part of the Artistics Car Club, and he's the president. So he's been lowriding since, I believe, 1979. And he's the type of OG who was lowriding back when Whittier Boulevard was popping in the heyday. So all those people who are familiar with lowriders and are familiar with Boulevard Nights, he was out there doing that. And since 1979, just been deep in it. He originally had an Impala. I can't recall the year, but he traded that Impala for his truck, and I believe it's a 48 or 49, and the year eludes me. In any case, he built that one up, and there's a picture of me. I don't know if you've seen it. Of probably I'm 4 or 5 years old. I'm standing next to him, and we're at Elysian Park, and I'm helping him wax his car. It's one of my favorite pictures. But and that that's how I got into cars. Not so much because the vehicle itself, but I was more fixated and attracted to the artistic aspect of cars. Not, and that's where my fascination and interest really grew from. So growing up, he had the truck. Then now he has a 59 El Camino. He has is it the 51 or the 53? I want to say it's a 51 convertible Chevy Deluxe. My little cousin, she's building a 63 Impala wagon, and so forth. That's deep. And I always grew up with those. I always grew up with those cars. I always wanted that car, and it's important to note that building a lowrider for me is I want to say it's one of the quintessential things I want to accomplish in my life, and it's also one of the hardest things that I'm gonna do, because there are so many things that need to be done before I have the means and finances to do so. So for example, I couldn't get this car unless I had a full-time job, unless I graduated from school, unless I paid off my student loans, unless I got the house and everything else. I needed to make sure I had a solid foundation in that regard and in that aspect in life before I could spoil myself in getting this car. So this car is a 1947 Cadillac Series 62. And this is my dream car. A lot of people dream about supercars and other type of vehicles. This is my dream car, hands down. Growing up, my biological father, he had a 1948 Chevy Fleetline. And the idea with that was it was going to be my car in the future. And even then, at a young age, I knew that car was special. It was different. It didn't look the same as other cars I saw out on the road at that time. So when my mom and my biological father got divorced, I'm like, hey, let's build the car, let's build the car, let's build the car. But he was in and out of my life. He didn't have an active role in my upbringing whatsoever. And the times I would talk to him, like, yo, give me the car. At that point, it's like, I don't want to build it with you. Give me the car. You owe X amount of thousands of dollars in child support. My mom said, if you write the title to my name, she'll forgive that. No, I'm not going to give you the car. And the straw in the camel's back for that was I was probably 18 or 19. I still had communication with him, even though I was like, I'm like, hey, I'm old enough to build a car now. Let me have it. And at this time, he had started a new family. He had another son. And he says, oh, I want to build that with you and his new son. I'm like, no, that's my car. You owe me that car for all the hardship that you put me, my sister, and my mom through. You owe me that car. And I felt very entitled to that car. He said, no, he's not going to do it. I'm like, you know what? Forget it then. And that lit a fire within me that if I want a lowrider, I'm going to have to go out and get it myself. But of course, I couldn't get it until I did everything that I had previously mentioned. And I got this car. Well, I'm skipping ahead. This car, I remember seeing a photo of it on Lay It Low forum. And when I saw it, it was love at first sight. And that's very much how I think. And I tell a lot of people this when they're like, for example, when you're going through the decision of painting a car, like, oh, what color do I choose? What should I paint it? And my saying is, you know it when you see it. Because when you see it, if it just draws your attention, and you keep thinking about it, like, yeah, I'm not going to regret the decision to paint the car this color, which is how I felt about this car. When I first saw the color for this car, I'm like, that's the color of the car. And I've never repainted it another color or anything like that. So it was the same way with the Cadillac. It's, I know it when I saw it. That's the car I want. But it was it was something I had never seen before. It was so much different than the typical fleet line that I was familiar with. Usually the fleet line has a fastback, but this particular car, it was a fastback as well, but the slope in the back was so much longer. It elongated the car and it just made it look so sleek and sexy. So I get the picture of that car, save it on my computer. I'm like, damn, I'm gonna get this car one day. I'm gonna get this car one day. Let's move forward to 2018. Was it 2018 or 2019? I had I had accomplished some of those important goals I needed to accomplish in order for me to move on to this stage of my life and getting the car. I got my full-time job finally, paid off my student loans, and I had proposed to my girlfriend. She was my fiance then, and I said, I'm in the position now to get the car, and I know I need to get the car before I buy the house and before I get married. This is going to be my last little toy for myself. And when did we, damn, my wife's going to get mad. When did we get married? 2018? 2017?
Like a true married person. Chingón.
Well, duh, we've been together 15 años, yeah. So I lose count in between there, you know?
When I see you guys together, I'm going to ask you, why long you been married?
So
I hate it when people ask me that. I know it, but at the moment, like, I blank out. It's like,
yeah. So see, yeah, ya sabes. I was looking for the car, and in the meantime, I was doing research on the car, and I came to learn that this car, there was only 8,500 made of the 47 Club Coupe, and this car is similar to the 1946. And it was a 2-year car, and the reason why was because the United States was just coming out of World War II, and of course during World War II, all the automotive manufacturers had shifted from automaking and support of the war effort. So World War II ends, and the U.S. auto manufacturers want to get back to making money selling cars, but because they were so focused on supporting the war effort, no auto manufacturers had redesigned any cars. So that's the reason they opted to bring out the 1941 and 42 models and rebadge them, if you want to say, to a 1946 and 1947 model. So that way it could buy them 2-3 years until a new model came out. And you'll see this with Ford, Chevy, and all those other auto manufacturers. So there's 8,500 produced this year. I'm like, damn, leave it to me to want to buy a rare car, you know?
mm-hmm.
But I was perusing Facebook Marketplace one day, and I was already a part of several Cadillac groups because I knew that's where I was going to find this car. And at the time too, the shift of buying and selling cars had moved from, that's what it was called, the recycler. It moved from the recycler from Penny Saver past Craigslist. Craigslist was getting old, to Facebook Marketplace, and that's where people were selling cars in this Facebook group. I was a part of the group, and this was on the 4th of July. I remember the day. And this ad popped up, and it was a Cadillac. I'm like, oh shit, it's the car. And I saw a price of $3,000, and the car was inside of a garage, and it was a garage find. That's the term that's used. And it had been sitting in there for 30 years or so. And the reason why it was important for it to be in the garage was because it wasn't exposed to the elements. And in particular, because this car was in Virginia. I'm like, okay, if it's on the East Coast, I have to worry about rust. And that's the reason why a lot of people want West Coast cars, because of the dry climate and whatnot. But like, it's garage. I'm like, that's the car. I'm coming home with this car. No one's going to buy this car from me. Like, that's it. So I reached out to the guy, and we exchanged information. I called him, and he told me, you know what? I'm getting a lot of interest for the car. someone offered me X amount for the car. I think it was like $7 grand. Yeah, I think it was like $7 grand.
So the original ad was for $3 grand?
The original ad was for $3 grand.
Wow, that's very cheap. Well,
yeah, it is. And I thought, I'll give you 8. So if you want to do it, we do 8. We can write up a contract, so to speak, via email. We'll agree to the terms on the email, and that's that. He says, then just send me a $500 deposit. I'm like, go for it. I'll send you a $500 deposit. Send me a contract, so to speak, via email. And we try to be as legit as we can. And even in speaking with him, he came forth as very honest and forthcoming. So I trusted him. And it was $500. Like, if I lose $500 rather than thousands of dollars because it's a scam, I'd rather lose $500. So I told him, okay, I'm gonna go out and inspect the car in person, and then we can move forward with completing the transaction. And at the end of July, I flew out to Virginia. And I flew out to Virginia to inspect the car, and it was humid as hell. I had never experienced humidity like that, and it was humid, and I understood why all the East Coast people complain about humidity. But in any case, I checked out the car, and what I wanted primarily was for all the pieces to be there, because in realizing the low production numbers of the car, I came to realize that it wasn't as mass produced as other vehicles from automakers. So whereas Ford and Chevy made 50,000, 60,000, or maybe even 100,000 of a particular chassis, parts were plenty. They were expensive, but they were plenty. Whereas with the Cadillac, because there was only 8,500 made, it was extremely important to get a car that had all the pieces, all the trim. Because if you try to look for the pieces and the trim, one, it's going to be hard. Two, it's going to be even more expensive. So if there was rust, I can deal with rust. Bodywork's not a big deal to me. And went, checked it out. I'm like, all right, I'm fine with this. Let's move forward with the transaction. Came back home, wired him the money. But what was cool about that, even before I wired him the money, he bought the car with no title. He bought it from an estate sale. And I forgot what documentation and what route he did so that he can obtain a title, but he obtained a Virginia title for the vehicle. So it was officially under his name legally, which is important. And he said, okay, no, I take that back. He didn't obtain a title from Virginia. He obtained a title from the state of Vermont, because through the state of Vermont, there's a loophole and an easier way to obtain a title, even if the car doesn't have a title. So he got the title. It was legally under his name, and then he could legally transfer the title to my name here in California. So he did all that. I'm like, all right, he's going through all this. I can trust him. I can send him the money. I wired him the balance of the money. I made arrangements for shipment. And the interesting thing about shipment is it came over in September. And it was around this time too that a hurricane was moving in the direction of the East Coast, and it was going to hit Virginia. And this car was, where was it? It was by a beach in Virginia. I can't remember the name. And had the car been sitting out when the hurricane hit, it would have been a complete loss. It probably would have got flooded, probably got taken away by the floodwaters. But the transporter arrived a couple of days early, and he said, hey, I'm going to pick up the car now. I'm like, yes. And he ended up bringing the car over. And had he not been there early, I probably would have lost the car to flood. And that would have been SOL, a lot of money. So he brought the car. And by this time, it was September 2017. And I had just moved into my current home. And before I moved into where I currently live now, when we were speaking with the then property owner, because we were first renting the home, I'm like, hey, let me look at the garage. And I brought measuring tape with me.
That's important. This car is not small.
And I measured the back of the wall to the garage door. And the property owner looks at me and he asked my wife, like, why is he doing this? And she said, oh, because he's gonna buy a Cadillac, and he needs to make sure that it fits in the garage. And he asked, well, what if it doesn't fit in the garage? And she said, we won't rent the house. And he looks like, what? So the garage was long enough to fit inside, well, to fit the Cadillac inside. And I'm like, all right, let's do this deal. So the Cadillac comes, and I bought rollers from Harbor Freight so that I could maneuver the Cadillac inside of the garage and position it. Because I'm only 5'3", I weigh probably then 120, 130 pounds. So, you know, peso nada. This is a 4,500-pound car behind me. So the rollers from Harbor Freight are legit. If anyone's interested, they're legit. They can move this big beast behind me. And the car came at night. I made arrangements to have a local tow truck to pick it up, and he maneuvered it inside of the garage. It was finally in the garage. It was in my possession. It was in our house. And that moment was fucking amazing. That was great. One of the happiest moments of my life. So happy, because what it also signified was, it was validation and the culmination of all the sacrifice I had made in the previous years to get to that point in my life, to get that car. That was the pinnacle of that. And it was also the end of a certain chapter in my life, because, like, all right, I got the Cadillac. What was next is chapter 2 of my life, which is me as a more of an adult. Even though I was 33 at that point, I hadn't had adult responsibilities because I was still living at home. And I owe a deep debt of gratitude to my mom and step-pops, because they allowed me to live at home. And in them allowing me to live at home until I was 33, I was able to save money. And I've already said this multiple times through the podcast, but paying off my loans, that was huge. I paid off my loans. I was able to save money to get to this point in my life. Their sacrifice allowed me and my wife and my family to be in this comfortable position in my life. The sacrifice my mom and step-pop made all this possible. And the Cadillac was recognition of all of that. None of this would have been possible had they not allowed me to continue living at home. So it's mixed emotions. It's so much, and that Cadillac means the world. What up, Chubbs?
Hey, Ralphie. He was listening to the story of the Caddy. Dude, when you said it, the minute that the house was in the car was inside your garage, in your home, I got the chills, man. I got the chills because you're right, man. It's not that moment that people don't understand this, especially living in a instant gratification society. The car going into your garage is not because you saved the money a month before, the week before, or because you have a credit card that you just slide and you got it. Like, you mentioned it, your goals, paying off student loans, and obviously I'm a huge budget nerd. I'm not I don't believe in debt unless it's maybe like a mortgage or business.
Yeah.
Not credit card, not definitely not student loans, just to get an experience. I forgot to mention that when you discussed that about the community college, about you're not getting the same education, and some people think that if you go to a 4-year, you're going to get better education. It might be, it might not be. You're definitely paying for the name on the sweater, and so that comes with other experiences that you and I will maybe will never understand what it feels like to go straight to a USC. But now as we get older, we're like, well, on a personal level, I'd rather be able to play with this money on these other stuff that I want, and experiences or trips, than just to say I went to school for 4 years that is quote unquote prestigious. But that's neither here or there. But the moment that you said, man, it felt amazing. Like, I can sense it, and I think I'm also projecting my own hopefully in that moment where, like, damn, I get, I keep saying it, I'll keep saying it. Porsche or the 63 Impala, one of those, because I've come across a lot of 64 Impalas, and I just like the way the back of the 63 looks, man. And so the 64 is great. I've come across some that are definitely within my budget, but it's a 63. Since my brother, who really loves lowrider, he corrected me on one. I was like, that's a 64. He was not dumbass. It's a 63. I was like, what? How do you know? He told me. I was like, oh, and from that moment,
the 63 is better than a 64, in my opinion.
Yeah, 64 is definitely glamorized, you know. But you know, that's like when you said that, I was like, damn, I got the chills. Like, so it's like, I wonder how that moment's gonna be for me, you know. So now that you pick, so I mean, I don't apologize for cutting you off, you know, but that was just like extremely important for people to realize. This is the moment of hard work. This is the moment of you growing up, really breaking barriers. And this is another barrier that you broke that it's monumental. You know, to somebody it might not be anything. It's like, what's a car? But it's not. It's not just a car. And it's this validation you mentioned. You know, hard work pays off. You work your butt off, and now you have it. I'm so glad it fit. It's a tight fit, though.
Man, you haven't been to the house. It's an extremely tight fit.
Well, I can see the bumper in the door.
Oh yeah. So here, let me move out of the way for people on the podcast. It's extremely close.
There's nothing fits in there.
Well, I scooted the Cadillac as far forward as I could without it getting caught on the garage door, so that I could pass through the back of it, and that's how I kind of accessed the Accord. Because the Accord is pushed as far, the Accord is pushed as close as possible to the wall, and eso que tengo a pretty large garage too. Because if not, it would have been a lot more difficult. And I still have a nice 3-foot walkway in between the Cadillac and the Accord. Methodical. Everything has to fit perfectly.
What is the vision for that Caddy?
I've been thinking about that for 20 years, and I mean that literally. The one thing I haven't come to terms with the car is the color. Color is extremely important. I haven't found a color that makes me say that's the color. I have color hues in mind. They're in the bluish greenish hue. I jokingly say, oh, I want to paint it purple because I love the color of my own Accord. But people tell me you can't have two cars that are the same color. I'm like, I guess.
That'd be pretty dope.
It would, but I want it to be something different. It needs to take on that theme of being a new chapter in my life. So there's that. I've come to realize in recent years that I'm more a part of the low rod part of lowriding than I am of the traditional lowriding.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's in part because of the import community. And the import community is a modern day hot rod. And people are probably thinking, well, how? And I think it's important to know the history of hot rodding. And hot rodding was following World War II. People who came back following World War II, they had a surplus of money. There was a surplus of parts, and people could buy older cars inexpensively, and they would soup them up. And that's how hot rodding began. And the whole premise of hot rodding is taking a car that's inexpensive and making it go fast. And in every essence of that, that's a Honda. Hondas are seen as a starter car, and people want to make them go fast, and they do go fast. Exactly. So I equate the import community with being the modern day hot rod. And as a result of building a modern day hot rod, I've taken those same practices and I want to apply it to the Cadillac. So that includes electric fans. I want to have it carbureted. I'm still up in the air as to what to do with the engine, because it has the original engine. The entire car is matching numbers. The engine is also, the engine that comes in this car originally came from World War II tanks.
Ooh.
And I'm a big history nerd, and I love that part of it. So the engines that come in these cars were applied in World War II tanks, and then of course once World War II ended, the surplus engines were put in this car, and that's a nice little history tidbit that I like to throw out to people. But it's older technology; it'll cost more money to modernize. I'm still up in the air to what I want to do to that. It's going to be a full frame off restoration. I was considering making it a unibody, but I I I think that would take me away from the traditional low riding. So I'm gonna keep the original X frame. I'm gonna have it all reinforced. I It'll have disc brakes. It'll be on juice. It definitely be on hydraulics. I want to convert it to 5x114 actually, and the reason why is because I want to run it on a set of Desmond Verse. Desmond Verse wheels. You're like, what
Okay.
wheels are those?
Well,
Because I want that touch of import of the import community reflected on the Cadillac. I cut my teeth on learning how to work on imports, and I feel as if I owe the import community that by paying oath to it and all that is done for me by having a JDM wheel on the Cadillac.
I don't know. I'll be honest with you. I don't know. I mean, you had me all good. I was like, please say wire wheels, and then you say,
Well, you gotta take a look. If you look up Desmond Verse, you'll probably see why. You're like, okay, that'll go well with the Accord. I mean, with the Accord, with the Cadillac.
That exactly with that Accord maybe. But I'll look at them. But yeah, please don't slap on T37s. That's
Nah, I don't. I'm gonna put a big brake kit on this too. So again, I haven't. I have a small list going on, but the one major thing really stopping me is the paint color. I don't know what paint color I want to go. I will have airbrush murals on it,
ooh.
and I like the approach of having it in hidden places, so the door jambs and other areas like that, because that's very much reflective of the Accord. The Accord, when you look at it, it looks like a stock body, but the more you look at it, the subtlety is there. You'll see I have rear sedan handles instead of front door handles, and that's because I don't have the keyhole. And then my side markers are different. I have the I shave the moldings on the side, and then because I have a 94, the rear bumper has an indentation. I have my rear bumper indentation filled in, and the whole car looks smooth on the outside. And it's those little modifications that you don't notice immediately unless you really stare at it. And I've never wanted the car to jump out at you. I wanted to gradually creep up on you so that the more you look at it, the more you can say like, oh damn, I didn't know that. Oh damn, I didn't know that. And that's always been my style of modification. That, and also I don't build a car with current trends. My idea with building and putting parts on the Accord, or excuse me, on the car, has always been I want it to look as relevant 10 years from now. I don't want it to look outdated. And that's the approach I've taken with the Accord. It's been painted 11 years now, and I think if you look at it now, it still fits into our current time, and that's testament to me that I did it right and I accomplished that vision and goal.
That's awesome, dude. Wow. I see that the current color scheme has a two-tone. Are you planning to do a two-tone, or you just showed on the fence? You have no idea on what route you're gonna go with that.
I will more than likely go one solid color. It'll be a dark color for sure, which is gonna be an absolute pain in the butt to detail. But because of the curves of this car, having it a light colored doesn't do it justice. I saw one painted all white, and it looked like a big beluga whale, and the shapes and the curvature just got lost. It just looks too solid. Whereas with darker colors, you can see the curves, the valleys, and it'll do significantly more justice to the car. And yeah, I'm itching to start on it, but I refuse to start on it because I know now, and I know better to not start a car without a clear vision in mind. And again, I learned that through building the Accord. It doesn't it does you no justice to jump from I want to do this, I want to do that. Have a clear vision in mind, and then do what needs to be done to execute it. So that's what I've been doing and continue to refine until the day I'm ready to break it all down.
When do you think that they will be?
I keep saying next year, next year, next year. Pero I don't know.
What do you think it's going to take?
How long?
No, I mean, just to get it started. Because I don't even ask how long the process, because I think it's a long-term process.
Mm-hmm. Ah, I don't know, man. I don't know. It's more so dependent on the color, as silly as that sounds. It's super dependent on the
No,
color.
it's not. It's not. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy to people don't understand the depth of detail that you went into in Accord. I can only imagine what you're gonna do with this lowrider inspired car.
Yeah, that's the dream. That I've been so I have these visions in my head where when I'm here in my garage and I'm listening to my oldies and I'm listening to the Midnighters. And for all those people who are familiar with oldie and especially the Midnighters are a group from the 1960s from Boyle Heights, and they have an eclectic and a very special sound. And there's a lot of people don't know this, but they were so famous in the time that they actually opened up for the Beatles. They toured with the Beatles, so they're a very big group. And I'll be listening to a specific song, "The Town I Live In," and I'll think of myself cruising in the Cadillac, and I'll have, let's see, it's getting emotional thinking about it. So cruising in the Cadillac, and I have my wife around my arm in the bench seat, and just cruising down Ocean Boulevard here in Long Beach, and that feeling is like I made it. I accomplished everything I wanted to. I made it, and I can't wait for that day. That's the motivating factor to finishing that car.
I was about to ask you where would the first drive be?
Whittier Boulevard. It'll be Whittier Boulevard.
Man, you better freaking let me know. You better let me know because I want to see that car rolling down. I mean, I think by then we'll be in whatever age we're in, and hopefully we're both alive. You know, because it sounds weird, and I've gotten that from a few people. Some of the listeners are like, "Why do you talk about death? We're all gonna die, and if death was by ages, then you and I don't have to worry about it for the next 40, 50 years.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not the way it works. The way it works is that you walk out in the morning and you don't know if you're coming back in the afternoon for your fault or someone else's fault. Now with this pandemic, that's a whole different shebang of, people's and personalities and where they stand on something politically, religiously, constitutional, whatever, or health. So that's what I mean. I'm hoping that I get that opportunity to see that moment because it's going to be extremely special to see you drive that car. It's just like you mentioned it. The moment it went into your garage, can't wait for it when it comes out all in one piece. And it's going to give you headaches. It's a real old car, But the memories that you'll be creating along the way now with your baby, maybe there'll be a picture of your baby helping you wax the car as you're standing there, and so that's a whole different legacy that some people might seem like a waste of money. Like we're about to spend that much money on a car, but you know, life is not all about YOLO, and it's not always about just saving every damn dime, because you also have to live. And in the lowrider community, in the Hispanic community, there's a big sense of memories. You are very humble, you work very hard, but you also try to create a lot of memories. It's not always about the more materialistic things you can purchase and show off, and things of that nature. So the fact that you're about to start creating a whole bunch of memories, one that brings to my mind, when you mentioned that you cleaned the whole block for the Accord, if I'm not mistaken, your nephews and nieces were there, right?
Yeah,
And then,
well, it wasn't my nephews and nieces. It was my god kids. So between my wife and I, we have 6, 7 god kids. I lost count, to be honest with you. But they helped me clean the block. I had the block here in the garage. I was cleaning it, and everyone was over. So they came in the garage and they were asking me questions about the Cadillac and what's going on with it. And I told them this is going to be a lowrider. And they said, "What's a lowrider?" And I told them, "Well, have you seen the movie Cars?" I'm like, "Yeah." Like, it's going to be like Ramon. It's going to jump up and down. Like, oh, cool. So I made that connection for them. And then they asked about the block. And I explained to them what it was, what I was doing. And at the time, it had the head off. So I broke down to them how the engine works and the combustion of it all. And one of my sayings, especially when it comes to children, is everything's a learning experience. Everything. And that was a learning experience for them, because I could then introduce science to them. And maybe down the line, when they're talking about combustion and who knows what else, like, hey, I remember my Nino telling me about that when we were cleaning the block of his Accord. Granted, it was child labor, and I gladly took it, but it's a learning opportunity, man. And I learned that when I was working at the teen camp. I've always worked with kids. It's always something I've very much enjoyed. And now I can definitely put that into practice with my own child. And that's hard in itself too, because you're with them 24/7. It's unbelievably hard and challenging. And I'm extremely lucky to have a partner who also believes in who has the same morals, values, and ethics as I do, and also agrees that everything is a learning experience. So in times of frustration, she's there to reinforce that, like, hey, remember, I'm like, God damn it. And vice versa. When she's frustrated, like, hey, remember. And that's so important to have too.
Yeah, man. It's funny, which brings me to the last 50 minutes of the podcast, because otherwise we're gonna go forever. But thank you. I mean, thank you for spending time and sharing such intimate stories, because they stick with me. Like I told you, like it was just so random that you did that on the forum. And I love reading your thread, because you're gonna go extremely into detail as much as we can, and it takes a lot of work. And I don't know, just random stories, from your build thread. One of them, which we're not gonna touch too much, because I know it's very sentimental, is one of your boxers. When you were detailing the car, and you took a picture, and it looks, I look at it, I'm like, wait, is that the actual picture of your boxer? It was a reflection from your car of your boxer.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, first of all, amazing detailing, and second of all, obviously, that beautiful kiddo crossed the rainbow bridge, as we call it, and obviously you have a lot of memories from that. So please keep putting out memories like that, either in the forum or even social media. Maybe I'll jump onto Facebook one of these days. But it really is. It's motivating. It's motivating, to say the least. And so for me, when I saw that you purchased this Cadillac, you created that thread, I was like, damn, because it took me back to when you first posted that one picture that you and I know, and you're like, this is it. This is the car. And that was many, 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 many moons back, man. I was like, when is this guy gonna buy these? And I would always see you be like, when are you buying a lowrider? Like, I don't know, man. it's not the right time. Okay. So when you finally purchase like this, did it, like, wow. And so that's very inspiring. The last thing that I want to kind of discuss is, speaking of inspiring, you and I have gone into great detail on different things like budgeting, obviously political stuff and things of that nature. But one of the biggest things that you have overcome that I think is freaking rad, I mean, aside from being a first generation college student, aside from being a professional in what you do, it's having your own space. You mentioned it. That was super important. And again, going back to memories, there's a picture that you took, or I think your wife took, and you're staring at the garage and you're standing outside and you're like, dude, I have my, these two cars in my own house.
Yeah.
Talk about like another amazing obstacle. Like, it's crazy, man. Like, congratulations on all the stuff that you've done at such a young age too.
Ooh, I don't know about another obstacle. Sheesh. I don't know of another. Well, no, I take that back. I do know of another amazing obstacle, and this was the one. Oh, this one. So paying off my stupid student loans. That was killer. I graduated from school at $60,000 in loans, and I went to a private university. And the $60,000 in loans, in comparison to some other friends who had over $100,000 in loans, paled in comparison. But I graduated at a time in the economy where we had just hit a recession. The recession was 2008. It carried over into 2009. I graduated in 2009, and it was extremely difficult to find a full-time job. And one of my personal models is never settle for less. I don't sell myself short. If there's something I think and believe I'm worthy and deserving of, I'm worthy and fully deserving of it. And that's it. It is what it is. So coming out of my goal when I graduated, like my first job needs to be minimum $50,000 because I know that's a livable wage. Anything less than that is going to be very difficult. So the economy was frozen. No one was hiring. I was sending out resumes and whatnot. I wasn't getting a response back. And this was the case for 5 years. But in 2011, 2012, I can't remember, I kind of found a loophole. And I'm very good with loopholes. And the loophole in paying off loans was, if you are enrolled in school, you can defer your loans. And the reason the term deferment is so important is because the only other option is forbearance. And the difference between the two is, if you take up forbearance in any case, whether it be a mortgage or whatever, you have a certain allotted of time. So you only had 24 months, 2 years over the course of the contract. And after that, once you use it all up, you are SOL. You have to pay that money back. Whereas with deferment, it's indefinite until you're ready to pay. So I found the loophole was, if I'm enrolled half time in school, I can defer my loans. And I'm like, okay, you know what? That sounds like a good idea. And the other reason that was important too was because with my loans, I had 5 different companies I had to make payments to. And if you pay the minimum on all of them, then you're not doing anything. You're not doing anything to pay off your loans because of the compound interest on the loans. And if people don't know about compound interest, educate yourself on compound interest, because it can screw you over or it can help you out, depending if you're investing or paying off, whatever the case may be. But the compound interest is killing me. So I enroll at ELAC. Believe it or not, I go back to community college, and I actually enrolled in American Sign Language with my wife. And it was her idea, like, hey, let's enroll in sign language. I'm like, you know what? I'm down. I've always been one to try something different. Let's do it, and we'll do it together. So we did American Sign Language for 2 years, maybe 3 years, and we learned how to communicate via ASL. And the funny thing about that is, at family parties, we're at a great distance from one another, like 50 feet apart. You don't want to yell. So we start signing, and people are looking at us and like, what the hell are you doing? Like, oh, I'm just communicating with so and so. And like, no sean chismosos. I'm like, don't be mad because you didn't understand. But
That's
it
cool.
exposed me to a new community that I was never made aware of prior to. And another thing that it taught me was how to enjoy education. And I think it was your guest, Izzy, who was talking about this in his podcast, where people don't enjoy education. They do it because they have to, but they don't enjoy it. They don't have fun with it. And a good example of that is college. You go to school, you go to your classes, and you work towards good grades, but you don't enjoy it. And when I started taking classes again, I was I was taking the classes and they were fun. There was no pressure on having to get good grades. Coincidentally, I ended up on the dean's list during the 4 years I was in community college, but education was fun. And that was something I had never experienced prior. So that was a nice experience. 2015 comes along and the economy is getting better. And I finally received a certification from a job that I had qualified for 5 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's important to note that I worked for the city of Los Angeles. I've worked for the city of Los Angeles since 2006. So from 2006 to 2015, I was an actual employee of the city of LA. In 2015, I finally attained a full-time job with the city of LA. And that was the catalyst to everything after that, the Cadillacs, getting married, X, Y, and Z. But my first goal was to pay off my student loans. I needed to pay them off. I was already paying them off when I was at ELAC because I was able to then apply a larger amount of money towards my student loans because of deferment. And that's the reason why that was important. So 2015 happened. Now I'm getting real adult money. And once I was getting adult money, I was working full time and then still going to community college in the evening till 2017. And I believe my starting pay when I first came into the city was $1,400. That was after taxes. And of that $1,400, $1,100 every month went toward my student loans. And I was already accustomed to working on a budget. So I told myself when I got my full-time job, you're used to living off of this budget. You know how to balance that. Continue living like you're poor, and the rest of the money, no lo tienes. So and with that $1,100, just paying off, just dropping money every month on my loans. And that's when I really started seeing huge progress on paying off those loans. And as I progressed in my city career, my pay increased and I was able to apply more money. And my goal was to pay off my student loans when I was 30. I paid off my student loans February of 2017. And the reason that's important is because my birthday was the next month, March, and I was going to turn 31. My last loan payment was February, a month before I turned 31. So I accomplished that goal.
Wow.
And after that, I experienced financial freedom. And you and I have had this conversation, and we both speak to what financial freedom is and the doors that having financial freedom opens. And it's very true because once I attained financial freedom, I traveled, I saved, and it's because of that and the sacrifice of sticking to a budget that I'm in the current fortunate position that I'm in now.
Yeah, definitely.
That was a hurdle.
Yeah, dude, that's a huge accomplishment. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I mean, it also helps that we're messing with old cars, like the ones that we have in the back. If we don't have the money, they can sit. They're not begging for a car payment a month.
That's right.
And so they're more expensive in the long run than a new car that you don't mess with. But in the meantime, when you budget and you do those things, it allows you to do that. So, and I know that you could definitely have gone all balls out on these on this build, but you obviously have other goals. It's not just about cars, and so
Oh,
that's
absolutely.
that's something that's something like you mentioned. You have to have a nice little set of a vision and a balance towards it. But I mean, what do you say to that one person who may not be in the same shoes as you are? They're maybe a little younger than you are. They do have student loans. They're car enthusiasts. They want to build their dream car. I mean, I guess finish off the podcast with a message to those people.
I don't know if it's never settle for less, but honestly, just don't give up. Value your worth, and the sacrifice you put up front and at the beginning will pay dividends down the line. You may not see it when you're going through it, and it's extremely difficult. And there were many a time when I would be speaking to my wife and I would break down because of the student loans. I felt that weight on my shoulders, and I would cry to her and I tell her, baby, I don't know if I'm ever gonna pay off my loans, and I want to pay off my loans because I'm not gonna marry you until I pay them off. That's not your That's not your debt. That's mine. That was a decision I made, and just stick it out. It's so hard in the moment. That was the one instance where it really broke me down, and the one time in my life where it felt like I could never do it. Because other than that, I'm very confident in myself, and if I put my mind to it, I know I can do it. But that was one of those instances where I couldn't see the light at the end of the tunnel, and my wife definitely helped me in that.
Wow. And that in itself too, finding the right
Oh my
part,
God, yeah.
that's a
Yeah.
great accomplishment from your end.
Yeah, especially coming from a broken home, so to speak. Um, I personally find it disrespectful when people tell me, "Oh, you needed a father figure in your life." No, hell no. I, I, I take it personal. I find it as you're disrespecting my mom. My mom was both the parents. Now being older, I don't know how the hell my mom put my sister and I through private school, but she sacrificed. And in the same regard, my biological father wouldn't have been a good influence in my life. He he was an alcoholic growing up, and it's one of the reasons why I personally no longer drink. And come to find out, very very recently, he also he also abused drugs. I'm like, damn, I didn't know about that, and I only found out about this within the last 6 months.
Mm.
So my mom took on that role, and he would have also, I believe, instilled in me, unbeknownst to myself, unhealthy masculine tendencies, so to speak.
Gender roles,
Yes, exactly. Gender roles.
machismo.
That was the word I was looking for, machismo. And I didn't really fall into it because I had a very strong feminine figure, and that being my mom. And when I say strong, I genuinely mean strong, unbelievably assertive. And family members now tell me, like, we have a sincere admiration for your mom because everything she went through, and we don't know how the hell she did it. And me being 35 now, I fully recognize it, and I'm just indebted to my mom. I appreciate the sacrifices that she did, and it was all because, well, in maturing and growing and being more cognizant and recognizing her sacrifices, that further motivated me to continue and pursue my education, in addition to also doing it for my grandfather. So my grandfather immigrated from Mexico. He immigrated through the Bracero program.
Ooh, okay.
And there's a rich history in that, and of course, me being a history nerd, I've had a great conversation with him about the Bracero program, his experience, and the difficulties he had in the 1950s and 1960s. As a matter of fact, I still have his Bracero card, and that's one of those things that I treasure, one of the material possessions that I value so much. And he gave it to me. He's like, "Here, Rafa, I want you to have this. It's time for you to have this," and that meant the world to me. But I wanted to show that the sacrifice my mom and my grandfather made was worth it, and that's the reason why I worked hard. I sacrificed and did it for myself. I needed to show them your sacrifice was worth it, and this is how it was.
Yeah. Well, you definitely have made a lot of people proud, and you're definitely keeping yourself proud, man. Keep at it. I think we need to have you back for another 3-hour conversation. We can dive into some other more intriguing topics, because you're definitely very easy to conversate, especially the way you articulate yourself, man. So definitely, thank you, man. Thank you. I cannot say that enough. I mean, this last 3 hours flew by. I legitimately mean that in a good way. A lot of other stories that I know about that I definitely will treasure and that I'm gonna have, and I think what's cool about this is that I'm not gonna forget your vision for the caddy, and when that moment comes, it's gonna be like, dude, we talked about it 10, 20, 30, 40 years, whatever it is. So Ralph, get some rest. It's late. You gotta work, and
I'm working from home. I got all the time right now.
oh, shit, enjoying life. That's good, man. Well, thank you so much to you, Ralph. I really definitely appreciate it, man. JTC Lib, coupe visors, let me know. Sorry, DJ. And to the rest of you guys who listened to up to this point, thank you guys so much for the love. You know, just obviously we talk about cars, but a whole bunch of other stuff. And I know for a fact that Ralph has motivated you and pushed some things in a positive way for you to, you know, get better at whatever goal that you're trying to face, whether it's in the car community on a personal level, or, you know, student loans or whatever the case may be. So thank you, Ralph, and we appreciate your time, man. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me, Gus. I'm glad we could converse in this fashion. I mean, it's always nice being able to meet with you and the conversations that we had, talking about books and whatnot. So if you never want me back on, I'm more than happy to come on, share more stories.
We will, man. Thank you.